It is lucky 13 July right here, Thursday, 7:10 KNUS. George Brauchler with you on the George Show. 93 degrees high today. That is as hot as it's going to be for the foreseeable future, at least according to our good friends at Denver 7 on their pictogram here. Drops down to 87 tomorrow with lightning bolts coming out of the cloud. That's a problem if you're going to the Tay show for the Era Tour out there at Mile High, because it's outside. I don't know if you've seen it. There's no dome. There will be on one when the Broncos move to Aurora. If you're listening right now, Peyton Manning or anyone with influence with the, or if it's our former Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, listen, come to Aurora, build SoFi out there in Aurora. You'll get the roof and we won't ever have to worry about things like this again. Wouldn't she love to perform at SoFi out in Aurora? Saturday, also lightning bolts coming out of the clouds. Both of those days, in fact, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the Yankees are in town to play our hapless Rockies. I read an article that said with the Rockies' current slump, and I'm like, slump? I mean, it's not a slump that's how you've been all season. Yeah. That's just the status quo.
If you just suck, it's not a slump.
Right. Okay. That is not a slump. A slump is we were doing really well, and we just hit a bump in the road.
Yeah, it's like saying that the Cleveland Browns had a little bit of a slump in the NFL for a while.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. After Bernie Kosar got crushed twice by John Elway and the Broncos, they hit a bit of a slump.
Yeah, a bit of a slump.
Sorry, Hugh Hewitt. Whatever you think about the Browns is wrong. Nonetheless, if the bump is the road, the word is, we had a little bit of a road in the bump. I mean, that's what we're looking for, is some sort of a 2-game surge here or something like that. So I don't know. Maybe they show up and play well against the Yankees. Last time I saw them play the Yankees was actually in the Bronx a few years ago. Once again, it was Grammy and I headed out there. I can't remember what else I was doing in New York at the time, but I brought him out. We did 3 games. Stopped in the booth, actually, of our radio station friends across the street. Nice. And they were super nice. Didn't let me call any of the plays, but that's probably a contractual thing. And I wanted to do the Bill Murray, for the Chicago Cubs that he does.
Now, did you see your Yankees have signed a jersey sponsor?
No. Who is it now?
I don't know, but it's the first time. It's the first time that you guys have ever had a jersey sponsor. And so it's kind of like
new jersey sponsor. Hello. Who is it? You don't know, but
who it is.
Who did we use before? Like
you didn't
just
have
random jersey people?
No, you just didn't have them. No, the idea is you're getting patches on the shoulders with the people are paying. They're doing the soccer thing. The NFL and the NBA and the Major League Baseball have all of a sudden caught up to this century, and they've said, right. You mean we can charge companies to put their names on our stuff?
So we're going to go NASCAR with the Yankees jersey?
Exactly.
That's a problem because much like the Marine Corps, the Yankees uniform has changed little over the previous 100 years.
And that's what I was seeing online as all these people are going crazy, going, this is one of the most classic uniforms in all of sports, if not,
sports.
Easily American sports, but all of sports, because so unchanged and so iconic. Even people elsewhere around the world that don't really understand baseball recognize the Yankees uniform.
That's the truth.
Like, now you're putting ads on it? Yeah, people were going nuts yesterday afternoon.
I'm going to have to look at that. That's disappointing. Unless it's a one-off. Like, hey, we're doing it for the Veterans Day thing or the pink ribbon thing or whatever.
And the other thing that I find ironic is Yankees have all the money.
They do have all the money. They have all the money.
More money with the jerseys. But the one team that wouldn't need to have a jersey sponsor would be the Yankees. And they're like, we like more of the monies. Can you please give us more of the monies? Because we don't have enough in this big giant Scrooge
Rockies
vault.
Maybe the Rockies could get a jersey sponsor.
Yeah, we need an ED sponsor is what we need.
The other thing about it is if you look at the Rockies draft choices, and I don't know if it was being praised or just reported on, but the number of pitchers we went after, in the college ranks and whatnot. And I'm thinking, do you really believe that's our issue? I mean,
exactly.
What pitcher over the history of the Rockies have we gotten that's figured out something called altitude or something like that? Like, we need to invest in bats and we need to win a war of attrition. Like, if we're playing for the old Japanese miracle perfect game of 1-0, at the end of 9, it ain't going to happen. What we need is to be winning 15-10, or something like that.
I would agree with you. That's the idea, is you should have bats that produce in this altitude because the ball doesn't move. And that's the problem.
We just need hitters. This idea that we're going to keep investing in pitchers do you remember 20 plus years ago after the Subway Series that the Mets lost?
Yeah.
Rockies brought on board Mike Hampton, who was the ace for the Mets.
Oh yeah.
How'd that turn out?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter who you bring in here. This is where pitchers go to die. Huh?
He was crying after a couple of games.
That's right.
What happened to my
I know.
ball?
I can't make the ball. What pitcher have we ever gotten? Which pitcher that has gone on to be talked about as, potential Cy Young winner this year? He's really having a tremendous year.
The only one that can do it is if you have a just blistering fastball and a good changeup. That's it. If you can change the pace of the ball, you got a shot. You cannot count on the ball movement. You just simply cannot in this altitude because there's enough wind resistance. We don't have enough of the oxygen.
And there isn't enough baseball fiber to give a good ball movement there. Whatever you're doing there. So I got that this weekend. I'm looking forward to it. Going to take some of Grammy's buddies to the baseball games now that the season is over, in essence, for them. And I'm looking forward to that. I am worried about the weather, and I'm worried about getting up there. I was thinking to myself, someone suggested, hey, take the train. I'm like, that's good. And they're like, and if you can't take the train back, you just need to be dropped off. You could get an Uber. And I'm like, what could Uber cost competing with 75,000-ish Tay fans? If half of them looking to Uber.
Surge pricing.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
surge pricing. It feels to me like $100 Uber ride to a few stops down. I'm not sure I want to go that direction.
It's kind of funny. A lot of my radio friends, some of them are scrambling now to find Taylor Swift tickets because the industry.
Good luck.
Yeah, well, the industry has changed post-pandemic, and it's kind of sad. Yeah, used to be that before pandemic, getting tickets to concerts, that was easy. That was as easy as going to McDonald's and asking for them to give me a cheeseburger.
Really?
It was ridiculous. Yeah.
When did that end? Because I missed that part of radio.
Pandemic, everything changed because they didn't make any money. And now they're trying to get back, having more fans in and things like that. There was a thing.
Yeah, a thing.
It doesn't really exist anymore. It's been tightly constrained where you could go
called The Honest Politician.
You could go in and you could purchase tickets in certain sections inside of the venue before they were on sale.
How do you do that?
Again, you had the connections.
It's in the rear view mirror.
There's not anymore. And it's there is an availability for that, but it is so tight and there's so few that I am no longer high enough up on the totem pole to get access to those.
Billy,
pre-pandemic,
have you told them we are the number one show in Denver, the number one talk show in Denver?
And they said who and hung up. No,
they said, "Oh my God, talk radio."
Yeah, talk radio. You don't play any of our music.
Yeah.
Wait, you figured out my clever plan? That's not good.
You say bumper music. We could do bumper music.
Yeah. So that's been really tight. So I've had a lot of people asking around and saying, Can you? And I'm like, I got nothing. Where in the past,
I'm so sorry. They took your superpowers away.
During the 1989 tour, my wife and my daughter went there. So, yeah. And there, it was really, And then, so now all the connections are drying up.
Man, that would have been huge. I'm so sorry. And yet
sucks.
I would have gone to the Taylor Swift concert just because it was an event. And I would want to see people around me who I presume spent upwards of $500 to $1,000 for these moments.
Her stage show is like nothing else. Unbelievable.
My guess
she has the money
true.
to do it. Yeah. And there's always some sort of and I hope there isn't this time. And again, I'm not going. But she always has some sort of a magic trick that she does where she disappears in one place and appears in another place during the show.
Any chance she pops up next to someone in the stands? Like, poof.
No. But she moves around the stage and does some other stuff. So she really leans into it. And the other thing that's kind of cool is the band is not on stage with her, but she has a live band.
They're underneath or something? They're in the rafters?
They're actually behind and down a little bit behind the stage, and each one of them has their own sound booth. So she has a live band.
Hold on, but they are de-emphasized in terms of as being individuals. They're just.
However, I imagine there are enough zeros on the check that it does not matter.
Who cares? I'd be happy to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You are to be heard, not seen, and I'm happy to do it. No, that makes total sense to me. Yeah. That's going to be chaos, man. I'm interested to see. On Monday, I'll have more feedback on how bonkers it was over those days.
In fact, I'm not going to be here next week.
What? I'm sorry?
I think it's going to be Friday. I'm off. I might take Thursday
This Friday off?
No, next week.
What are you talking about? I disagree.
Is in town, so I'm going to go see them.
Are they playing in the morning?
No, they're playing at night, which makes the morning.
Hold on, you're an adult. All right. I realize we just had
a
segment on 85% performance, but not 85% attendance.
I'm an adult that knows it may be really difficult to wake up after coming home. That, and I got the yes that I'm gonna have to see Duran Duran later this year at Red Rocks, which is gonna be cool.
No way.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Simon Le Bon's got to be what, 75?
Oh, easily. Yeah,
something like that.
Easily. But the idea is it's them live, and I never saw them when I was younger live, and I wasn't ever a huge Duran Duran fan. My wife is, but I do want to see them live. That's one of the bands that's from my youth.
All the same dudes.
Yeah. And they
from
sound
the front of that boat.
They sound okay, not great, but they sound okay.
Maybe we should put in some Duran Duran bumper music and Tears for Fears. Well, listen, so you're going to be gone for an entire week to recover from this?
Well, no, because again, I'm not gonna break the secret, but there's some secrets about if you've been in the media long enough to getting in and out of Red Rocks. There's some things there that you can do that make the experience much easier.
You can't share that with us here.
No, I'm not giving away those secrets.
Really?
No, this is a phenomenal secret that to get in and out very easily.
And who does that? Who's like, I know something you would all love to know, but I'm not gonna tell you.
You can't. You have to have the certain access, and you have to know how to get to the certain parking lot, and you have to know about the shuttle that'll take you up there and back, and it's things you got to do. So we'll talk about it off air. But
okay, all right, then I can say it on air when you're out of the studio.
Yeah, I guess so.
I got it. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
So you're going to be gone which day?
It'll be next Friday for sure. I'm thinking about taking Thursday off as well because I have a bunch of other things to do on that day in addition to going to the show.
I know, but
if I got to get up late, it'd be fine. It'd be much better for
Is this an age-related thing? Like,
oh hell yeah.
Oh yeah, I didn't sleep well last night, but I didn't mail it in today. Although, having said that, as I'm trying to crush you on being gone, I'll be gone on Tuesday. So.
Yes, I know you'll be gone on Tuesday, and then the week after you're gone for 4 days. Now
that's military, though. That's very different. Yes, that is serving my country abroad. Is who can say no to that? So we're going to have some people filling in here. I imagine we can come back to smoldering ruins. Or the most successful turnaround in radio history, where they'll be like, Billy, you and George don't need to come in anymore.
Yeah, you don't need
fine.
to. Yes.
You can. You know what? You can watch it on the Rumble.
Yeah,
Did you know we're on Rumble, Billy?
Yeah,
and we're on YouTube. Did you know that?
We'd love to have you sign up.
Can you text the show from the app or 710KNUS.com?
That's what we'll get. Yeah. Like, and can we have that jacket back we gave you?
Yeah, it's a sweet jacket.
Yeah, that is a nice.
But we're in the weather time. We need a new line of the 710KNUS branded clothing. If anyone out there, Mark, is listening.
Oh crap! You know what my son got yesterday?
Hopefully it's not a communicable thing.
I was just thinking jackets. It just popped up. I just was thinking that his stadium jacket arrived from Manchester United, and that is something phenomenal. And why cold weather NFL teams don't invest in selling stadium jackets is beyond me. I do not understand.
Wait a minute, so how much does a stadium jacket run these days?
A lot of money.
Yeah,
it's
$50.
No, this was on sale and it was $350.
Holy smokes! And that's American dollars.
Yeah, and but again, this is a stadium jacket. Okay, now this is the idea. When you're watching the NFL and it's cold, they come over and they put those large poncho-looking things over the guys.
That's right, and they breathe out there.
Yep, that is a stadium jacket because it is long, it is warm, and it's designed to keep you away from the elements. And in soccer, especially England, not every season, but every so often, the team will sell their stadium jackets. They have those in England and they have those elsewhere across Europe. No, they're new. But the issue is they fit you because you're not covering a giant person who is not only a large human being, but also wearing lots of pads.
Oh, sure.
So while it could be a part-time tent, the ones that they use for the NFL, these are actually built for normal, regular-sized people, and they are huge jackets that are, again, waterproof, resistant to the wind, all the elements.
And because it's soccer, bloodproof.
Yeah, filled with goose down and goes down to about your shins. And it has all these things, like it has several pockets that are just enormous in there, and it has a hood on it. The jacket weighs about 3 pounds, and I don't understand why NFL teams don't sell their own stadium jacket, because I think there would be a market for those big giant ponchos that they put over the Broncos during the games if you would size it down to regular people's sizes and then sell them for, I don't know, let's say $350 to $500. You could sell a lot of them, because one of the advantages, you think about it, if the jacket goes down to your shins, that means you have padded, warm weatherproof seating when you sit down in your.
It's just a big winter dress.
Exactly.
For dudes.
And it's wonderful.
Yeah, and I guess in this day and age, you can go, we're going to call it now, instead of the stadium jacket, the Mulvaney jacket.
Yeah, we could.
And you can be anything that you want to be.
You also look somewhat like a monk as well, so could you go religious and that way? But I mean, these things are smart, and they've got, they open up the sides, the zipper goes both directions, giant pockets.
Does it have one of those special flaps on the back part of the keister, like the old long johns?
But it does. You do have snaps that run down the sides of it from about your mid-thigh down. And so if you wanted to and then pull it up in the back, you could back flap it that way.
But then the problem is you can see how then it gets all bunched up and hits that part of the toilet you don't ever want to touch with someone else's dead hand. It's just so bad. So that right there is the birthplace of probably the COVID.
And I'm jealous because most of the time the stadium jackets are basic primary colors. And so you're paying a lot of money for a large black or blue jacket with a logo on the front. And that's crap. And he got one that has a really nice black and gray herringbone design on it. So rarely do they do the nice design. So that's why he did that.
Word herringbone. Nonetheless, Alexa has already texted in a brilliant idea. Yeah. And that is, why don't we take a page out of the Yankees playbook and get some sort of sponsored jerseys for the 710 KNUS folks?
Oh, that'd be nice.
Can that work? Now, I know for those people that are watching on YouTube or Rumble, and yes, I know I said YouTube and not the YouTube, but nonetheless, we could probably get Mark to sell that TV space behind us too.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So people could put it.
I've heard rumors they're trying.
I want to see them do it though. Like if in a stadium where in between innings, you can see that happy birthday to grandpa.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think we ought to be doing that here. I mean, make it totally reasonable. Like for $10 or something for a while, it cycles through and like, will you marry me, Steve, or something like that.
Have things then maybe in that between the third and fourth hour, we can have the thing where it pops up and you have to guess which one of the animated cars or whatever it is to win the race.
Right.
Yeah. And you got to bet.
But it's in between breaks on the show. It'd be you and I doing it.
Yeah,
it's number two. It's number two. I mean, three. It's three. No, it's in the middle hat. It's the middle hat.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything dumber up on the screen, and yet everybody's so. I like to turn away from the screen while Graham's looking at it, and I'll just yell out a number. It's one. It's one. It's one. And then,
every once in a while,
you're right. I'm like, brilliant. Boom.
Yes.
I just nailed that thing. And I'm sorry we've run out of time for this segment in essence, because I wanted to talk with you about your dentist. I wanted to talk because there was that preliminary here. We'll have to do this later in the show. He was in court yesterday.
Oh my goodness.
Oh boy. I want to try this case so badly. I'm going to confess, I have on a semi-regular and yet unpredictable basis reached out to the current district attorney, and amidst a bunch of other things that we chat about and stuff like that, as you know, we're friends. I will throw out there, pretty please hire me for next to nothing to just come on board and try this case, because that case, along with Jurinsky's case, I mean, these are the cases you live for. You step through the muck and mire of human carnage and just evil, and then the more mundane, routine, forgive me for saying it these ways, burglaries, robberies, drug dealing and stuff, so that you can have a case like this, that years from now, when you're at some sort of a social setting or you're sitting down at a stadium watching the Yankees play the Rockies, and someone turns to you and says, man, like, what's the craziest case you've ever had? And you're like, you know what? I've got a few to choose from. Yeah. Do you like your dentist? And then instantly this case.
They're like, oh, you're the killer dentist guy?
This case gets better and better.
Oh, yeah.
For the rubberneckers like us.
Like, here's an example. Like you turned me onto this.
You mean in terms of attention. I don't want anybody to clip that part of the show. And Billy tells George, you turned me on. Like, no.
That needs to be, we need to have the logo of this, and then that should be the quote on the back of the t-shirt.
Disagree. I really disagree. Unless we're going to attribute it to, we could attribute it to Stefan. Then it makes sense. But no.
This, you said, Good Morning America, the other woman.
That's right.
Yeah. And so this is what she had to say.
Started reporting on it, that I realized the timeline was so tight that it was like 2 days after we had left that meeting.
When you read that affidavit, that he was Googling things like, how many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human? Is arsenic detectable in an autopsy? What was that like?
I don't really think I have an answer for that, because it's like, I don't have any sort of headspace of my reality where that fits. I didn't willingly have a relationship with somebody who was in a marriage.
Karen says they never consummated the relationship, and what she hoped was a promising new romance has ended with her pulled into a tragic investigation. And of course, the ultimate victim here, a vibrant woman, a daughter, a sister, and a mother of 6.
I can't even imagine the loss of a family member, and then to consider that it could be at the hands of someone that had been in the family for 25 years.
And someone you're thinking of getting naked with.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Listen, and again, we can laugh about this, not to make light of the tragedy of the death, because that story does make me feel a little bit guilty when it highlights that, it was the daughter, the mother. Believe me, what I'm laughing at is how the guy that did it was so quickly and easily caught. Although I think in retrospect, we'll look back and say there was a bit of providence involved here, man. God was involved in.
Absolutely.
But at this point, listen, some of the things the dude read, the reporter read, those are all good ones. But some of the ones they didn't are just even more damning. Here's another one. Yeah. Another search on YouTube and the Google called "How many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human?" That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah. Is arsenic detectable in an autopsy? Tells you you're thinking of using the arsenic. Yeah. But the word choice on this one is just punishing for Mr. Killer Dentist, and that is how to make murder look like a heart attack.
Oh,
I mean, you use the word murder in the search, my man.
Yes, you use murder. That's a little bit of giving away the motive there.
What the hell?
Oh, my Lord.
And detectable in an autopsy tells you exactly what you're going for. Like, had you searched for, can arsenic cure adult onset acne?
Yes,
then it shows up and maybe you're like, I thought it was the cure.
Yeah, can arsenic cause a heart attack? I mean, there's certain things that even though you can explain it away, but in murder,
this guy is so stupid.
The only thing that would have been worse is if I kill my wife. That's the only thing that would have been worse.
And type her name in there.
Yes.
If I murder so and so, how can I get to be with the woman I met a few weeks ago? And blah blah blah. Signed, Killer Dentist.
Yes, exactly.
This is a guy who, one, I predict will be convicted, but secondly, he's not going to fare well in prison.
No, he won't.
This guy, it seems like, probably has lived a life where his shenanigans and his BS have carried the day far more than they haven't. And all of a sudden, if you read some of the other stuff, and I wish I had been available to watch or at least be in the courtroom for the prelim, some of the stuff that's reported here between Carol McKinley from the Gazette and Bradbury from the Post, like, this dude's life was coming off the rails, right? Like his partner / friend from dental school that bought the practice to kind of bail him out from his would-be second bankruptcy cut his pay and told him, you must work more. And it's like, things aren't working out. And except for he and his wife, and during the workouts, he would give her poison in her protein shake. But that
explains a lot, because he, of course, is my dentist, and I didn't see him around the last couple of years. I didn't see him around. Yeah, I didn't see him around in the office as much as he was before. So I could see the partner saying, hey, you've got to be here more. I could see that.
Alexa said that she listens to Stefan in the afternoon, and I appreciate that.
That is good. Thank you.
That is good. Thank you, Alexa. That he said that it must have come out that dude is still sending love letters to, I think it must be this lady that you just played the thing on.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's bad.
That's troubling. But for her, can you imagine that you're, I mean, there's got to be those moments during those weeks where you're like, this guy's so nice. He finds me attractive. He's funny, but he's not attractive, but he's funny. And then all of a sudden somebody's texting you and they're like, you need to Google Dr. Killer Dentist or something like that. And she does. And it's like, oh, my sweet mother of goodness.
Oh, in another part of the interview, she talks about how that they would start texting each other early in the morning, 6, 7 a.m. And it could go on the entire day until 2 a.m. in the morning. So this is something where she was getting emotionally invested. She wasn't, again, jumping into the I love you pool yet. However,
do we know that?
Well, give the conversation. Yeah, because she said that it was only they met at a dental conference and they only saw each other for like 2 days, because I think it was like they met on a Thursday and the conference was over Saturday. So they hung out Thursday evening together, then spent the day Friday together. Then everybody goes home on Saturday, but they continue to talk and talk and talk. And it's only 3 weeks before the wife dies. So she's like, no, and so I get the impression that she definitely was interested. She thought she had a new romance that could lead to love, but I definitely get the impression that she absolutely was not on the love train yet. But was she looking?
That's a whole day. Who do you text all dang day like
I know,
that?
but I do think that she was looking at the schedule of the train and figuring out where the station was. I do believe that she was ready to get on the love train. Absolutely, she was ready, but I don't think that she was there yet.
How many times now in the future? Wait a minute. Is this the woman that was also married with kids, or is that a different woman?
No, this is the woman, but she's married, but she was going through divorce at the time.
Okay.
And that was supposed to be one of their connections at the thing where he lied to her about going through a divorce at the time.
At this point, though, doesn't this look bad for the ex-husband too? Because his buddies are like, she's got great taste in men.
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever. The nice one.
Yeah, exactly.
And then for her in the future, are you a swipe left or swipe right when you show up on the old Tinder or whatever it is? I hope I'm using those terms correctly, by the way. When someone's like, that first date when they're like, listen, I'll be honest, I'm not that attracted, but are you the lady from the killer dentist? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And what goes on at a dental conference? I mean, how many times do you have the old wink, wink, nudge, nudge, where you're like, it's just amazing what people put in the mouth.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it?
Look at this new way we can fill a cavity. I mean, what's the technology that we're leaping forward with?
What we need is Dr. Julia, our in-house resident oral surgeon / dentist. I want to be a dentist. To call in. She has been a great expert for us on this, especially when I said, hey, have you ever used potassium cyanide in any sort of oral surgery? And it was almost like she was scared to answer because it was so bizarre. She's like, did I forget to read a journal, or did something come out? Like, no, I did. I don't know why you would order that, but you can see in her mind, she's racing through, maybe this is something the Korean dentists have discovered that's coming to America. But no, it turns out potassium cyanide really plays no role in oral surgery.
No,
at all.
Not at all. Neither does the arsenic.
Yeah.
Oddly enough.
Just how do you make murder look like a heart attack?
How to make murder? That's just
like,
why oh,
it would be like a search like, how do I kill Billy Thorpe?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
best way to dismember a body.
The attorneys for the defense were asking Dr. Lear, we'll talk more about this in detail later, who is just the gold standard, by the way, for medical examiners in the state of Colorado, but asking her, couldn't this be from environmental exposure? She's like, yeah, maybe no. And here's why, right? Like, could this be from an initial ingestion of arsenic that just kept being, recycled?
Yes.
No, it can't be that.
The follow-up question would be, pardon me, how did the initial ingestion happen? That's a big question here.
It sounds like the only question they didn't ask was, listen, throw a buddy a bone here. Is there any way in which this arsenic could have gotten into the body that wasn't the product of a murder?
Yeah. Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the question they should have asked. And I'm sure Dr. Lear would have been honest in that. Is there's a million different ways these things could have entered the body, right?
Yeah.
I don't see any evidence that any of those things
exactly.
exist, but they could have.
Oh, yeah.
And
I like the idea that you went back to earlier that said Providence was involved in this. I do believe that because part of the reason they uncovered this was because a person inside the office opened up
just doing her job
box of killer drugs. and she was just doing the job. And that's how this started to unravel and started to put the pieces together.
Oh, yeah.
Is because the office worker did their job and was like, this isn't normal. Yeah.
The other big reveal here is, and I don't know if Stefan talked about this yesterday, but there was an additional charge that was put on the case. Solicitations, kind of tampering with a witness kind of a case.
Ooh.
Or maybe it was solicitation to tamper with evidence. I'm going to have to take a look and see the wording, but it is also incredibly damning. Just, it is if you want to look guilty, what you do is try to change the evidence against you. You know what I mean?
I wonder if it's got to be a conversation, I would think, between the partner or someone else in the office where, no.
Or a family member.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You remember when we did this, right? No.
Or
that's not what it is.
Or, hey, family member, I need you to do blank.
Oh, yeah. Because I go back to, who's it, the Murdoch, the guy that was convicted of, shooting the family members, that he did that to the housekeeper at his mom's house. And he talked to her afterward and was like, that on that day, I was there only for 45 minutes.
Right. Remember that?
No.
Remember that, Billy?
Yeah. Remember how that happened? And he tried to walk her through the story. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember that, Billy? I wasn't gone for 20 minutes during the radio. We didn't pre-record that. Remember that, Billy?
Not. Yes.
Listen, speaking
crap, look what time it is.
I know, buddy. I've blown up the 6 o'clock hour, and I'm going to blame really Alexa for no other reason than she can't defend herself. Stick around. We're going to, I don't know, flounder from here on through the rest of the 6 o'clock hour. At 7 o'clock, we're going to have Mayor Mike Coffman on to talk about the love affair ending between Aurora and Denver Police Department on some issues. And then later on in the morning, we'll have on former District Attorney Mitch Morrissey to talk to us about crime. That crime report, I think, is going to get released today. We'll have a conversation about that. And we're still working on some other things. It'll either be Ken Buck today or tomorrow. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. I'd sing along with Stevie, but man, have I hosed us with the time thanks to Alexa's timekeeping. I'm going to turn it right over to Billy to see, my God, man, what can you possibly do with the Thorpe Report?
Yeah, what can you do? Today, hot 93. Tomorrow, hot 87, 85. Back to the 90s on Sunday. Stay out of the sun.
And done.
Yep. After 12 years in office, Denver Mayor Michael Hancock is looking forward to a new chapter. He's trying to find another city in America that he can ruin. I may have added that myself. Sorry.
Holy blow.
He said some stuff, but we don't believe him anyway. An argument escalated into a fatal shooting in Denver's Ruby Hill neighborhood yesterday morning. Denver Police Department said they were called up to the 1700 block of West Moser Place around 9 in the morning for the shooting. They arrived, learned it began with an argument that escalated into a shooting, because that's how things go, especially between friends. So they were friends, and they're in their 60s and decided to argue. And then
grumpy old men.
I know. And then when all Yosemite Sam.
Shooty old men.
Startled by gunfire, residents in Wheat Ridge apartment complex said they received an early and unwelcome wake-up call earlier in the week at 4:40 a.m.
Redundant.
Someone drove by and just started shooting into the building.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, now the police say that this looks like it is a targeted attack, that they were trying to shoot through the walls of the window of someone they were trying to kill, and they're trying to do an investigation. Elsewhere, we found 3 bodies near the Gold Creek campground north of Ohio City in Colorado, and that's in Gunnison County earlier in the week. A hiker came upon a decomposing body and then later found 2 more that were inside of a tent. They're not sure what happened, and they are doing an investigation. Don't know if foul play was involved. A man's been arrested in connection with the death of a Fountain police officer who died after falling off a bridge earlier in the year. I'm sure it surprised everybody. It was the person that the officer was trying to apprehend at the time that is the suspect. Super shocked.
What?
Yes.
Crazy.
So absolutely horrible. And that's it. That's all we got.
Okay,
Good
buddy.
enough.
Okay, listen, we may be able to pull this thing off. I wanted to banter some more about the news, but I think you may have just set us up for success. Let's cut away for that next break. Usually they're about 40 minutes now, but come back, stick around, and we'll get the You Choose the News, which is the best part anyway. It's the best part of the whole hour. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
Leave it to Billy to right the ship, and just in time, it's You Choose the News.
Yes, sir, you are correct. It is time where we play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show, You Choose the News. Yes, we have scoured the interwebs for mere moments to find really stupid things that us humans have done, giving them dumb headlines to play this fake radio news game because they continue to pay us for it. And nobody that's in charge is awake at this time, so they really don't know we do this.
What?
Yeah, don't tell them.
I don't want to be awake.
Alrighty, sir. Me either. All right, here are your choices this morning. Headline number 1, Crouching Tiger, Knockoff Ninja. Headline number 2, Isn't the Attention the Point? Headline number 3, That Wasn't on the Itinerary. And headline number 4, They Really Need to Change That Slogan. Alrighty, your choices yet again are Crouching Tiger, Knockoff Ninja. Isn't the Attention the Point? That Wasn't on the Itinerary. And they really need to change that slogan. Your choice.
That wasn't on the itinerary.
That definitely wasn't on the itinerary. And so that means that British cruise ship operator Ambassador Cruise Line is now apologizing to their tourists because recently the passengers on the luxury liner docked at the Faroe Islands. And it's a beautiful place where you can explore the country and interact with their native peoples and also watch them slaughter dolphins.
What?
Yes, obviously,
Who kills dolphins?
someone at the Ambassador Cruise Line didn't check the calendar because when they decided to dock their luxury cruise liner at the island, it was also Grindrap. Yes, Grindrap is the Faroe Island term for a traditional dolphin slaughter. Now, what they did is they did do its long-finned pilot whales. Those are a subspecies of dolphins. But the tourists, as they docked, were greeted there in the bay of the natives of Faroe Islands, slaughtering 78 of them.
Oh my God! In front of the boat people?
Yes. And we're talking about the water runs red.
How?
Yes.
Oh my God! How do they? What are they doing it for? Is it a religious thing, or they eat them?
It basically, they eat some of them. They harvest the blubber. They use it to for oil, and they use the meat. And so it is.
How do they kill them?
Quickly with large knives.
Is it true?
Yeah, I mean
it's not like it's not like arsenic and potassium cyanide
not after
slipped into their protein drink.
Not if the dolphins have gone to another conference and found another lady dolphin.
My God.
No.
I mean, can you imagine the trauma? Hey, kids, look at the oh my God, the horror, the horror.
Although if it was me, I still would have wanted to see if I could quick print some T-shirts. I was the Faroe Islands, dolphin slaughter of 2023.
People all over the radio want to flipper you off. After that. Hello.
Oh, my family too. Alrighty, sir. Your next choice, Crouching Tiger, Knockoff Ninja. Isn't the attention the point? And they really need to change that slogan.
Crouching Tiger.
Crouching Tiger and Knockoff Ninja. We're traveling to San Diego, California, IA, for this one. And this is an odd story where a 63-year-old woman was walking home through the City Heights neighborhood early on Tuesday when she was attacked by a man who scalped her.
What?
Yes.
Wait, what?
Yes. Dude was dressed all in black, had a sword that was several feet in length. Again, she's 63 years old. She's walking home at 1:30 in the morning, so I have some questions. But the guy jumps out and holds her down and scalps her. It's an unprovoked attack, and the police don't have a suspect, but they're asking anybody that sees someone running around with a large sword. No, she survived.
Just no hair? Or?
No hair at all. Took the entire scalp off. And the thing is, she's 63. So the idea of, the skin growth and everything coming back is going to be really difficult for her. It's going to be really hard.
What the hell? And the guy got away?
Yeah. Nobody's,
It feels like
he is a ninja.
It feels like the end of Lucy Liu's character in Kill Bill Volume 2.
Exactly.
Doesn't.
Yeah. And I'm still looking at going and someone, walking through the streets of San Diego. I'm like, sword. That's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Well.
Yeah. Again, it is San Diego. Alrighty, sir. Your final choice this morning. Isn't the attention the point? And they really need to change that slogan.
Isn't the attention the point?
Yeah, isn't the attention the point? Here we're going to meet young Odin. Odin is 32 years old, and over the previous 11 years, he has spent nearly $8,000 to modify his body, and now he's mad that people are harassing him both online and in person. He says, they stare at me, they call me names, they point, and it's not fair. But then again, dude has spent over a decade modifying his body. How? Well, first, he started with some tattoos. He's tattooed his own chest. He's even tattooed his eyes.
Oh, no.
His eyes are all black. He recently has undergone a procedure where his entire face has been tattooed black. But that's not where he stopped. No, he also has modified his body in other ways, adding things to his body. Like he put an implant right below his nose. He also
an implant
has
of what though?
I don't know, but it's a large lump now. And it didn't stop there. He also started to remove things.
No.
Yes, he has removed. Excuse me, this is a little difficult. He's removed several fingers, his nose, and his nipples.
But why? Wait.
Yeah,
he cut off his nose despite his nipples or something?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, missing the nose, missing the nipples, and only has 3 fingers on each hand because he's removed 2 of them. And he's like, people keep staring at me. Really?
Yeah.
Really?
What? This guy may have mental illness.
It might have.
Maybe.
At least he's only doing that to himself, not trying to chop off other people's body parts. However,
he could do society a favor and cut off the down below so we don't have to worry about,
speaking of that.
Son of freak show.
Speaking of that, one of the body implants he's had are, it says,
here we go.
I'll just
buckle
read it.
Up.
Ribbed genital implants.
What?
It says ribbed genital implants.
Actually, that's the only sane one I think you actually did. That one's the only one that makes any sense, honestly.
And on that is the end of You Choose the News. I cannot think of a better way to end it. Today, we are proudly sponsored by Mayor Hancock. Yes, he is leaving office after 12 years. And today, you can get your own commemorative 16th Street Mall gift bag. Yes, you get a gauze pad along with bandages, just in case you're assaulted by any aggressive homeless person. Also, you get a ShamWow to help clean up the puke and other body fluids you're into. And just today, you can get your special bag o' syringes. Yes, looking for projects in crocheting. Oh, no.
Oh, my God, dude. of maybe it'll be the new Queen City of Colorado, Aurora, Colorado. Mike Coffman, sir, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What'd you think of the music?
Oh, it was appropriate.
Now listen, Aurora and Denver touch, and I don't mean in an inappropriate way, but they rub up against each other in borders. And as you've pointed out a million times, way before the thing we're going to talk about here, turns out criminals don't really respect the borders between Aurora and Denver as much as we encourage them to. And so there have been a lot of cooperative things that go on between Denver and Aurora, and I think there will be after this, but something is afoot. Something is going on where you have asked the city council to approve something that might change the way that Aurora cooperates with Denver. Talk to us about the background for it and where it's going.
Yeah, sure. Monday evening at the next regular Aurora City Council meeting, I will bring forward a proposal that will terminate our mutual aid agreement with Denver. And this is really, you are very right when it comes to these task forces, when it comes to working across municipal boundaries in terms of apprehending criminals and preventing crime. We are going to continue doing that. I think the issue is during the George Floyd riots in May of 2020, late May of 2020, they, under the mutual aid agreement that we have, they called on us to send our officers into Denver to help them quell these incredibly violent riots that were destroying their city. And so we did. We acquiesced to that, and we sent our officers in. Then afterwards, they said that they would not defend our officers in terms of the lawsuits that were being brought forward by lawyers representing these various activist groups that were litigating based on, violation of constitutional rights. And so they said, no, we're not. We'll defend our officers, but we're not going to indemnify your officers. But our officers were sent there under their direction, and so and I think they're trying to like tamp it down now by saying, we just want clarification in the statute because it's unclear whether or not we have an obligation in the event of a constitutional issue that arises to indemnify your officers. Well, and that somehow we also want clarification of the statute, and then we're kind of holding hands and going together before the court, which is really not true. We made a decision to litigate against them to fulfill what we believe is their obligation to indemnify our police officers who were, again, acting under their direction in their city.
What does that look like then? Have you guys filed lawsuit, Mayor?
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
In Denver District Court?
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, you know what? I'm not positive on which district court it was filed in, but I guess it would be Denver, since it's an intergovernmental issue. It would go to the Denver court. To indemnify us. And here's my position: is that I don't really care. I want two things, or we're just going to avoid this agreement. Whatever the court says, and that is that first of all, I want to be indemnified. I want officers indemnified for these oncoming lawsuits against us. That's probably going to happen. I'm sure that's going to happen. Denver paid out $14 million to these groups to a settlement. So I expect that we're next on the chopping block. And so I want officers indemnified, but also I want a rock solid agreement going forward. There's no question about this. I don't care what the court says. If the court decision sides with Denver that they don't have an obligation because there's a statute that pertains to this, and it didn't intend on that constitutional issues they would have to indemnify our officers on constitutional grounds. Well, I'm not going to. My position is we shouldn't be sending our officers in there again. Then, if they have another civil disturbance, another riot, we should stand down. And so two things. I want this suit. I want them to cover the cost of indemnification and drop this lawsuit. And I mean, just to acquiesce to covering us. And then I want a signed agreement by incoming Mayor Johnston going forward that says there's no question we'll indemnify our officers, and we're never going to try and wiggle out of our what really is a moral obligation for the city and county of Denver again.
We're talking with Mayor Mike Coffman from Aurora, a growing issue, I think, between Denver and Aurora that you covered well. Can I ask, from the standpoint of Aurora, let's pretend for a moment that Denver gets out of indemnifying Aurora for what took place what is alleged to have taken place during these post-George Floyd protests, and then the lawsuits advance and all that. Where does the money come from, in part, to defend Aurora in terms of representation in court, but to any outcome, whether it's through a settlement or a jury determination of damages? Where do those dollars come from?
Come from the general. Well, it come from first of all, from our insurance, which is always going up, and then there's a stop loss provision in our insurance policy that would require money to come from the general fund above that amount. I'm not sure in this case what that stop loss number would be, but ultimately it comes from the taxpayers because the insurance premiums come out of the general fund, which are always going up because of this litigation, these types of litigation. And then, again, whatever comes directly from them above the stop loss of the insurance policy, level of the insurance policy. But the fact is that ultimately it all comes from the taxpayers of the city of Aurora.
It seems like in this day and age that every time a police officer waves to certain people, they file a 1983 action in federal court. And so when I look at the conversation that Michael Hancock is having with the media, where he says, here's a quote, Aurora's taking an overly broad interpretation of the indemnity provisions in the mutual aid statute. My question is, what do they envision indemnifying Aurora officers for if it's not these allegations? What is it would be left to indemnify them for? A car accident?
There's really not a whole lot left. I mean, because I think outside of that, and that's what I don't really understand, is of course it's going to be a constitutional question about somehow that their rights were breached to these people that were trying to destroy their city. But obviously, if there's criminal conduct there's no question that that's going to be pursued differently, not through a civil process, but through a criminal process. So, and we are certainly not going to shield our officers from that, irrespective of where they do it, where their conduct is in terms of which jurisdiction. So yeah, it's hard for me to. I know that there was a statement that defined it a little bit in the Denver Post today, but the fact is that all these cases that come forward by these protesters are always, generally always go to federal court, and they're always about. Well, they always go to court. I'm not sure. I assume that it's federal court. You would know that, but it's always about constitutional issues. In terms of that their rights were somehow breached.
When you look at this, and if I just say it out loud, it seems so obvious to me, and that is Denver asked for help with something that took place in Denver. They helped lead and guide the folks from Aurora that were there to help Denver take care of something in Denver. But if something gets alleged against the Aurora cops, they're on their own. They need to figure out a way to defend themselves. I can't see another circumstance where, if your neighbor said, hey, Mayor, or hey, Mike, my house is on fire. Can you come help me put the fire out? And you show up with your garden hose and you spray down part of the fire. But in the process, a family picture gets ruined. And that neighbor showed up and said, hey, man, I'm going to need you to help pay for the damage to the painting. You'd be like, I'm never coming over to help you with a fire again. You know what I mean? Like, dude, I just tried to bail you out. You can't tell me that that's craziness. When this happens, and it's going to come to a head here, and I think what you've said is important in that it kind of doesn't matter what the court says here. I'm either going to get an agreement from Denver or we're going to move forward with sort of this breakup thing. Do you worry that the next time Aurora puts out the call for help that Denver will be like, well, we're not coming either?
That certainly could happen. But there's also the reality that we never called upon them when we were having problems in this city during post George Floyd environment. And I was talking to the governor at one time where he was willing to deploy National Guard personnel, and so we probably would have gone down that route if necessary. But it's obviously quicker to call on police versus calling on the National Guard. But no, it's just, I mean, the reality is, given urban Denver, given their political environment, that are a little bit more welcoming to these protests, I think they're more likely to have problems than we are. But nonetheless, there could be a potential cost to the city of Aurora, and I'm aware of that. But this is just an untenable situation to send our officers in where they're going to defend their officers in court, but not going to defend our officers in court. And I just can't be for sending them there and under those circumstances. Obviously, it's going to take a vote of the Aurora City Council, and that vote will be Monday night. We'll see what happens. I believe that they will support my proposal that to terminate the relationship. And obviously, we can always start it again if Denver changes their behavior.
Is it possible that a partial solution might be that Aurora does exactly what you're asking Denver to do, and that is to proactively say, hey, we want to keep our side of this thing going in case we need help for the unforeseeable, but we'll indemnify your guys if they show up here and help out. Can Aurora do that and sort of, I guess, highlight how disparate the behavior is from Denver to Aurora, vice versa, that kind of thing?
Oh, I certainly could. I don't know if there's going to be support for that on the council. I think that, and I don't know if Denver would be willing to, have a unilateral. I mean, there would be some unilateral mutual aid agreement. Well, I suppose that it would be. They probably wouldn't turn it down. Well, I mean, or would they? That I don't know. That's a good question. I think that I don't think we're going to get there to that point. I think there's just going to be a clear question about, well, look, we're going to either have a mutual aid agreement or not. If we're going to have a mutual aid agreement, both sides are going to have to indemnify the officers from the other jurisdiction, or we're just not going to go forward with this.
I don't know of any lawsuits that were generated from the response, but next week, a week from today, in fact, will mark the 11-year anniversary. Seems like way too positive a word, but 11 years since that monster walked into the theater there at the corner of Alameda and 225 and tried to murder all those people. And as you remember, there were cops from 45 minutes away that were able to get there in like 20 minutes. I mean, it was amazing, the law enforcement response, including Denver. And so it's just interesting that we're coming up on a period of time where in those circumstances, where those are the things that happen, nothing ever grows out of that. There's no lawsuits. I don't remember a single negative thing involving Denver police. And yet when you have the big heavy lifts like the George Floyd thing, especially in the post-George Floyd era, where lawsuits against cops are not just common, but they seem like golden tickets to access millions of taxpayer dollars, that risk has become so real that if you don't have an agreement like this in place, you have no idea what you're signing your community up for to support.
Yeah, I think, and if you look at the circumstances today, I mean, oftentimes as a mayor and then council as well, gets briefings in terms of these litigation matters, and it's always that if we have to pay $1 out in damages to the plaintiffs, that we're liable. This is how we're briefed, that we're liable for all their attorney's fees. And so they are able to rack up some really big attorney's fees. And so oftentimes there's a risk. In Senate Bill 217, absolutely needs to be, there are elements there that absolutely need to be changed. That's the legislation that the General Assembly enacted post George Floyd, where the post-certification peace officer standards and trainings, that license to be a police officer in the state of Colorado is in jeopardy. When there is this litigation, and so if in fact the officer is found at fault.
We're talking with Mayor Mike Coffman. A couple final questions before we cut you loose to keep doing the good work you're doing for the man. I think you guys have the third largest city in the state of Colorado. Is it right behind Colorado Springs?
The third largest, 51st largest in America now, and the third largest in Colorado.
Which size in America? Which one?
51st largest city in the United States.
My goodness. We have had Chief Art Acevedo on a regular basis here to talk about what's going on with the city and policing and all that other stuff. Any word on if or when there will be a decision to transfer him from interim to permanent chief?
No, there's no specific timeline right now. I certainly support him becoming permanent. I think that, but I think the good thing about it is the community certainly that becoming very comfortable with him. I think he's done a good job. So I think that transition is going to be pretty easy, but I don't have a timeline for it.
Final question. How are the talks going with the ownership of the Broncos to move the stadium out to Aurora?
They're not going anywhere right now. Sometimes it's interesting. Sometimes I get a group, something like the Broncos, but that hasn't happened yet. But coming to me, and sometimes it's just they want to negotiate. They want to improve their position in terms of negotiating with Denver. And so I remember this was a while back. Actually, when I was in Congress, I had the president of Frontier Airlines, asked me to lunch, and he was saying how he wanted to move to Centennial Airport. Wanted to move Frontier Airlines to Centennial, which I thought was just the most bizarre thing I ever heard. But he was negotiating with Denver with those gate fees or whatever they're called, and so I think he just wanted the word out there that he's looking at other options. I don't think that people around the Centennial Airport would have appreciated that.
No, I also think that the result of that conversation must have been the decision to pay the gate fees by cutting off customer service. Because you can't get a human being for customer service for Frontier anymore. I just wish you could talk to the animals on the tails. I listen, if there's any way that this show can be of value in encouraging the Broncos to move their stadium SoFi-like to Aurora, one, huge economic driver for Aurora, but two, how awesome for Broncos fans to not have to navigate that nightmare of I-25 and I-70 to get over to a Broncos game. You would go down as legendary. You would leave office the opposite of Mayor Hancock. You could, there's time on the clock, sir. You can make that happen.
Okay.
Yeah, listen, I can't get him to commit to it. Nonetheless, if you can just feel free off air, let Billy know when you want to come on to make the announcement. In fact, we might make it for you. When this interview's over, I may announce, you heard it here first, Mayor Mike Coffman, bringing the Broncos to Aurora. You'll know it started here. Thank you for being a part of that.
They're welcome.
Mayor Mike Coffman, thanks for your time. Let us know how it goes, by the way, with the Denver thing, would you?
We'll do it.
Thanks, sir. Take care. That was Mayor Mike Coffman with Aurora. Breaking news here. I told him I was going to say it. I wish I could break the news. Honestly, I want to be able to say the Broncos are coming to Aurora. And I think that's going to happen. I just don't know if we'll be on air when it does. And not because it's going to take that long, but because I just, having seen Mark in here before 8 a.m., I imagine it's probably pretty close to them pulling the plug on the entire show, and they just need people here to monitor us leaving the building. That was an interesting conversation. It makes total sense to me, and this isn't an anti-Denver thing. This is a pro every other law enforcement agency that might come to the help of Denver. It just doesn't make sense that your neighbor asks you for help and then expects you to defend yourself from allegations that help was some. It doesn't make sense to me. And you need someone to stand up and fight for Aurora. And it sounds like Mike Coffman's that guy. In fact, Billy, let's do this. We're going to make the sausage on air here. There's a guy named Juan Marcano, who is an avowed socialist, who is on city council. He is running for mayor. I'd love to see if he's willing to come on to talk about his approach to that. And if he's ever heard of the Broncos. I don't know. Listen, stick around. We can change topics. We can keep this thing going. A lot of law enforcement and crime stuff going on in the news today. And as you know, I love chatting about it. You can give us a call based on what you heard there, 303-696-1971. Do you agree with Denver? Do you agree with Aurora on this? I'm an Aurora guy on this issue just because it makes total sense. And then we'll start to prep the battlefield for our later conversation this morning with former district attorney from the aforementioned Denver, from that crime scene investigation report. You'll be shocked by some of the statistics. There's some shoots of green in there, don't get me wrong, but holy smokes, man, Colorado's got to do something here. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Texts are on fire, talking about this, that, and the other. Here is something from our buddy Eric Manning. And first off, I want to acknowledge Eric Manning. The name is all in caps, but the text is not. Eric, thank you for that, because it doesn't feel like you're screaming at me now. George, why didn't you ask Mike Coffman? And Mayor Mike Coffman was on the last segment. Why was Chief of Aurora Art Acevedo, why he was fired from Florida PD, Texas PD, hell, you name it? That is the question. Well, Eric, you'll recall that we actually had somebody ask Chief Acevedo that right here while he was, I think he was in the studio or something, when he was asked by a caller, and he answered that question when we have him back on. And when are we scheduled to have Chief Acevedo back on? Might be next week, but I can't remember. I think it is next week, because it was going to be when I was out, but then it's not when I'm out or something like that. So yeah, next Wednesday, we're going to have him, I think, in the studio, and I'll be back in the studio as well. That's the time to ask another question about it, but I think he already answered it. And it was Miami. It wasn't just Florida PD. And in Texas, I want to believe it was, Houston or something. It was Austin, some sort of city out there. And I don't think he was terminated from that one, but that's what happened there. Now, listen, the whole Denver Aurora thing is very interesting to me, because there are so many reasons for them to want to be cooperative because of what they represent in the region, which is a business hub, as well as, Aurora for a long time had been a bedroom community for Denver. But as work has changed and industry has changed and things have spread out in the metro area, Aurora has kind of become its own juggernaut in the economic world. And one of the things that we're starting to see, and this is going to negatively impact Denver even more than it has right now, is hybrid work. Hybrid work it poses a huge risk to Denver and other cities that have a ton of, at this point, vacant office space. So now there's an article out of Reuters that says hybrid work trend may wipe out, wait for this number, it's crazy, $800 billion from office property values by 2030. Folks, I know that sounds like it's 7 years from now. That's a blink of an eye. $800 billion. And what the article goes on to say is that they did a survey of some of the superstar cities out there: Beijing, Houston, London, New York City, Paris, Munich, San Francisco, Shanghai, Tokyo, and Parker, Colorado. And, no, I'm kidding. They didn't actually do Tokyo. No, they did Tokyo. They didn't do Parker. And they showed that the demand for office space was going to be 13% lower in 2030 than it was in pre-pandemic 2019. 13% doesn't sound like a lot, but it is huge. And if you know nobody in commercial real estate, first off, tell them they ought to call the show right now. But my understanding from folks that I know that have dabbled in this, and I can tell you where my friends have gone with this, back during the heyday of legal weed in Colorado, there was a run on like strip mall space and commercial space. Any place that you could grow, warehouse, or sell weed just got gobbled up. I mean, people made ridiculous money off of vacant commercial space. And those days are over now, is my understanding. And so the trend that's happening now, because the vacancies are increased, is that the shoe is on the other foot. And instead of landlords dictating, hey, we're going to increase rent by this or that, and you have no options, now what you see, especially in these superstar cities, are tenants saying, you know what, as it turns out, I want a shorter lease. I don't want to do 5 years. I don't want to do 10 years. I want to do a couple years. Now, there are parts of Denver that are hot and blowing up, and you see businesses folding because they don't want to pay the increased rent and all that other stuff. I get all that stuff. But this idea that the vacancy rate is going to hover at around 13% higher than it was in pre-pandemic levels is going to be potentially devastating to these landlords and these commercial property holders. So in my mind, there is yet another factor that is weighing against moving into Denver, not just to live, but to work. And I wonder how that trend shows up. I mean, if you're looking for challenges for MMJ, who gets sworn in less than a week from now in Denver, and I presume, first off, one of the things you have to know about Mike is A very personable guy, very smart guy. I find him to be genuine. I think he's just a genuinely good dude, and I think he wants what's best for Denver. Now, his definition of what's best and mine may not always be the same, but I don't ever question his motives on this. I mean, that's just ridiculous to go into it that way with the new mayor, but I've known him before that, going back, I don't know, 10 years or so, and I've just always found him to be authentic. But he's got yet another problem to confront. And maybe, you know what, Billy, I think we just solved a problem here. Maybe that's what you do with the unhoused or the people currently experiencing tent living and defecating on the sidewalk or whatever the term is. You just have the city rent the vacant commercial space and move them in there. What about that? I mean, we just did it. We just solved it.
You are about solutions. I appreciate that. That is a solution. Just move them into there, see how it works. And I'm certain that nothing would happen if, say, you're paying rent and then next door it becomes a homeless squatter population. I'm sure nothing would happen negative there.
Obviously, every Lululemon needs to be next to.
Oh yeah, I can't believe that outgoing Mayor Hancock didn't think of this brilliant idea.
We solved it right here together.
Yeah.
We are problem solvers. It's why we're the #1 show in Denver.
It is.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Some of it's the bribery, but others of it is just the straight up fact that we're committed to making things better. The blackmail's part of it too. But why not? Why couldn't you use I think you've got too many people that are choosing to live on the streets. And we want to attribute all of that to things that are beyond their control that they wouldn't want to change, which is nonsense. But we have all this vacant commercial space. I think the trend is going to be away from Denver. I remember 10-ish years ago reading articles about the resurgence of the city. People are moving back into the city. The city's where it's at. And then all of a sudden, I think when the pandemic hits, people realize I don't have to get in the car or the bus or the super limited, mostly functioning light rail and go up to the big city. I mean, buddy, candidly, and I think Mark is the only one that's listening here, is if we could do this show remotely, you and I would be looking at each other through a video screen in our homes. I mean, we just
can be only partially dressed too.
Well, that's not different than now, but it's a little more appropriate. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But isn't that the trend of all this stuff? Like getting back into the workplace, not that cool.
Yeah. And part of it has been, and this is just anecdotal, but the conversations I've had with friends, the #1 thing isn't necessarily they don't want to be in the office with the coworkers. The problem is getting to the office and the parking and everything else that is involved there. I talked to some people and they're like, listen, I have gained somewhere around, 7 to 10 hours of my life back during the week because I am working remotely. And the fact that I don't have to, slog with everybody else on the highways to get into the office and then find a place to park, which is going to take more money out of my pocket. Right. And then also it does become a little bit less expensive. There were people that were brown bagging it to the office, and we all remember how they'd leave the stuff in the fridge. Maybe here they do that too. But now you just have to turn around and you're eating your own food. And so I can see that. And I also can see the big bonus for employers. I understand Musk's idea that, you need that that time to come together and to interact off of each other. And you can't really do it through Zoom meetings, etc. And I would agree with that. But however, on the other end, you're not paying to heat the building. You're not paying for the lights. The workers paying for their own internet at home, some of those things. So it reduces some basic costs. One office that I know of, I think they're probably saving minimum $600 on coffee because they're not bringing people into the office as often anymore.
The other thing is, and we haven't talked about this, a lot of folks don't know this. Billy's a big climate denier, but and that is the positive impact on the environment, right? Like if you're not on the road driving around, navigating here, there, or everywhere, it seems like that's got to be a win for the greenies.
Yeah, it seems like it would be. And also it should be a win for your taxes because we wouldn't have the wear and tear on the roads and some of the infrastructure problems.
That's it.
So there's an issue there too that I think is an actual positive.
And something else political, and that is if you are troubled, as I am, by the outsized influence that the Queen City of Colorado has, one of the ways to de-emphasize that is to make sure that they don't get all the tax revenue related to your transportation into and around and all that other stuff. that could have an impact on them and a positive impact on home. I will tell you that if you look at a lot of the homes being built now out in the suburbs, first off, wholly expensive. But two, I think there is now a move to doing away with the formal dining room.
Yeah,
sometimes for nothing, like the big great room, but in exchange for the home office. You know what I mean? That office setting. And home offices have been around a long time, don't get me wrong, but the dining room thing seems to be dying off in almost every house.
Yeah, the idea of having a separate room where you all will gather with, at a table. It's always opened up now into that. It's that open floor plan, but it's opened up into the great room. But they're taking what used to be considered the den is now becoming a converted office. And so rather than that place where, where Ward would retire at the end of the day and Beeve would come in and they talk about things and, and why certain changes are happening in his body, that's not there anymore. That's now a home office. And that's really a premium anymore as well, because if you do have a home office in your house, that's also a tax break if you do it right. So there's a plus there on the other end as well.
It's so interesting too. First off, here's a texter who's feeding off of this conversation. The mayor's biggest challenge will be what to do with Mile High and McNichols when the Waltons move the Broncos, Abs, and Nuggets to Commerce City. Or first off, they're not moving to Commerce City,
they'll go to Commerce.
Folks. That would be an attendance killer in my opinion. Also super risky in light of the fact that the Common Sense Institute report that is coming out sometime this morning is going to point out that Adams County, where Commerce City lives, and Denver, two counties that add up to 21% of the state's population, add up to just about 40% of all crime in the state of Colorado. So that doesn't make a lot of sense.
And according to recent studies, maybe Suncor isn't your best neighbor, because they seem to be dumping stuff into the air, into the water.
That's right.
So maybe not.
We're not quite Flint, Michigan, but we'd apparently like to be them when we grow up. But it said after the move, no one will ever need to come to Denver. I'd like to hear what his plans are on this gem/bomb. I think it would be a decreased reason to go to Denver. But look, they still have the Rockies, and I don't think they're moving anytime soon. And there's a lot to do in Denver. I don't dislike Denver. I mean, once you're there and you're going to the DCPA or something like that, it's a great city, right? And there's a lot of bars and restaurants and stuff that are worth your time and your money. But the idea of driving there, like during the day, when I know I have a meeting or some event there, I can feel my blood pressure rising just as you get closer, or you start looking for a parking space, or it's like, how many bullets do I have to dodge going from my car to the building or something like that? I know it's not Chicago, but and
I like that you brought up the parking, because I think that is a large portion of it, is how are you going to park down there, where are you going to go? And that is part of the pain point that the city of Denver has right now, because they see these wide open, empty parking lots around both Ball Arena and Mile High, especially, that aren't used. It's all of this real estate that could be generating tax revenue some way or another. I mean, it would be amazing if you'd think, well, what if, again, just spitballing, what if they did allow public parking during the day in the lots at Mile High and then ran shuttles to different areas in downtown? Not necessarily the most convenient, but because it's so close to the highway and getting off there, 6th Avenue, and so it could actually help you get in and out of downtown, because right now it is a nightmare trying to navigate through downtown to find parking if you're going to get there in any reasonable amount of time.
It's also something that highlights an ongoing issue that I have with Denverites. Not all of them, but there is a certain pomposity to them, a certain elitism to them. Well, we're in Denver. I mean, Denver's the best city in the world, and we live in Denver. And you see that attitude permeate under the Gold Dome too, which is Denver drives the conversation and really the culture and the legislation for the entire state of Colorado. I'm on Twitter. It's probably a huge mistake. It's probably aged me as much as anything else. Huge mistake, but I can't get off of it at the moment. Someday I'm going to get myself off of it. I'm going to walk away.
All addicts say that.
I'm going to stop chasing the dragon. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I've gotten back and forth, and I respond, man. People tweet stuff and I respond, and
your second mistake.
Usually the folks on the left go right to name calling and accusation. It's just their
Which
go-to.
means you win. I love that. This person, on a side note, every time I can get someone in that conversation to start calling names, thank you.
I always feel like it's over.
Yeah, because you don't have, if you had an actual argument, if you had facts, figures, something to counter this with, you'd be using those, but you can't. So it's you're ugly and your mom dresses you funny. Thank you. I will take the win. I appreciate you being
as long,
that open.
just as an aside, there are some folks out there who, after you tweet out the description of the show, will come back with some particular wing that will be like, you guys just advanced the conspiracy theories. I'm like, you don't listen to the show, dude, because we don't do the conspiracy theory thing here. We're different than
part
that.
of the description that I'm trying to do is the one thing that I like is when we get that feedback after I send out the post about the show and get that feedback, they're responding. I'm like, that was the point.
Yeah.
The point was for you to get there and to react to it. Yeah, to listen to it. But that's the idea, is I stopped. Whatever you were doing in your social media scroll, I got you to stop, read it, and hopefully click and listen. But that was the point, is I wanted you to digest that information. So when you send it and talk back to us, thank you. That was why we did it that way. It's just like the previous hour I was telling you off the air. I tagged it, pro tip, don't search how to make murder look like a heart attack if you're planning on doing a murder.
So which is, by the way, that's just helpful.
Yes, exactly. So we are helpful and informative.
So would-be murderer of your spouse, man or woman, you can thank Billy for that little nugget.
Yes.
But one of the things that's been going on the past few days, and I respond to tweet, not all of them, but I respond to them as long as they're trying to advance the conversation, even if I disagree with them. And there has been this ongoing back and forth with someone who is committed to the idea that we ought not spend one more penny widening Pena Boulevard or any other highway because it's just so convenient to take the train in, the A line, from Denver into D.A.
Yeah.
And I've gone back and forth and said, well, what if you live in Boulder or you live in Parker or some other, it doesn't matter. And their response was, well, you can drive into any of the stops along the A line and just park your car there and all that other stuff. And I'm like, but this is the elitist Denver attitude.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
It is so convenient for us. You should enjoy what we enjoy here, even if it's inconvenient for you to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's Denver. I mean, we're Denver, for God's sake. And that you see that more and more. I hear that more and more. And as much as I love Denver, I grew up in Lakewood, man. We're right next door to Denver. I used to come into town all the time to see my folks at work and stuff like that. It makes me resistant to Denverites when they give me that sort of elitist, everything else outside of Denver is just the flyover country to get to LA or New York. Like,
there's a elitist attitude. Unfortunately, we feed into it a little bit because the mayor of Denver has an outsized voice elsewhere in the state. And it's even covered. Sometimes you get
not this mayor.
Yeah, well, you get the but Mayor MMJ is coming up, and he'll be quoted in things that happen in Colorado Springs. He'll even be quoted in articles that go as far down as Pueblo and sometimes Gunnison and Grand Junction, because again, it is viewed as that heart of the economic engine inside of Colorado. But you're right; they're given an outsized voice, and there is that elitist attitude. Oh, look at the time.
Good Lord, man. This is the problem. This is why you and I can't talk at the same time. We keep blowing up the entire show.
We need someone to just pay so we can just do an hour. And
I used to count on you to regulate us. Clearly, I can't do that anymore.
No, that's a mistake.
Okay. Well, listen, I don't know what's going to happen here. Cross your fingers, folks. We could be back. We might not be back. We don't know. Billy's going to work some magic with the numbers and the time and all that other stuff. Stick around. George Brauchler on The George Show. It's 7:51 on 710 KNUS. Well, folks, when you hear that music, it can only mean one thing. Somebody, either named Billy or George or both of us, have screwed up the time on this hour, but that's okay. We'll be back at 8 o'clock with a guy named Mitch Morrissey. He's the former DA from Denver. New crime report coming out. We're going to talk about it with him. Yet another reason to reconsider. What am I just on right now? 710 KNUS. We are halfway through the Thursday 7:13 show right here in 2023. George Brauchler with you on the George Show. I'll be with you till 10 when Chuck Kirk takes over, and then we go Prager and Gorka 11-1. And then right back here live and local with the Deb Flora Show. I think Jimmy Sengenberger is filling in for Deb this week. And then at 4 o'clock, we go to Stephen Tubbs from 4 to 7. We're going to go back to a friend of the show here, wicked smart guy. He also has the title of Criminal Justice Fellow for the Common Sense Institute. And just today, they are releasing their latest report. And I keep talking about them like it's the third person, but Mitch, you and I are part of this thing. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning, George. How you doing these days?
I'm still looking for the opportunity to sleep past 4 a.m. I'm looking for whatever that is. I haven't discovered it yet.
Wait till you get to be my age.
Come on, Mitch. You have the best hair in all of prosecution. Nobody would mistake you for a guy north of 45. So please don't tell me about the age. It's all that tennis is what it is.
Yeah.
Now, listen, every time we have you on, in part, it's to talk about what is going on in terms of crime. Now, before the Common Sense Institute, you would get an occasional story here or there that was much more anecdotal based, or maybe a small statistic here. But the Common Sense Institute has continued to generate data-driven reports. And here's another one that's coming out today. What was the purpose of this report?
Well, it's really an update. We've been doing these annual reports as the federal statistics come out from the FBI. So, there is a lag time, but we're talking about obviously last year because those stats are just out now. Stephen Byers and his team at the Common Sense Institute, along with you and I, knocked it out of the park again, I believe. There's continues to not be a lot of good news when it comes to the cost of crime in Colorado. But, it's another good report. It's got a lot of interesting things in it. I think some that you and I were a little surprised about.
Oh, yeah.
But, those statistical guys usually come up with different ways to look at things. And the good thing about this report, I think you can look by county if you're interested. If you're living in Adams or Pueblo or Alamosa, you can look at what's going on as far as the crime rate there and the cost to people of those counties and the cost to the individual Coloradoans.
One of the things about the report is it doesn't answer the why. Like, why is it happening here and why is it happening there? And we try to tackle that in other reports, but this one was really an update to the cost of crime there. And the report goes through the details of what constitutes a tangible cost of crime, police reported crime, intangible, all those other things. But talk to us about when we put this thing together, what were the things that stuck out to you as particularly noteworthy?
Well, $27.2 billion is the cost of crime to the state of Colorado, which that means that's the equivalent of almost $5,000 per Colorado. And I think it's 4,600. So, that is a lot of this crime problem is not only, do we see it with victims, we hear about the homicides, we hear about, the break-ins, the property crimes, people getting their catalytic converters stolen, number one in auto thefts across the nation. But really, when it hits your pocketbook like that, that means a lot, I think. And that's what this study shows. It's not going down, George.
No, it's not. And that $27.2 billion isn't like cumulative crime over the last, 2, 3, 4, 10 years. That is the annual cost of crime for 2022.
Right. That's a 1-year cost to the people of the state of Colorado.
What I like about the way Stephen tackled this report, too, is that it breaks down, as you pointed out, the by county thing. There's some real eye-opening numbers there. Tell us about what that breakdown by counties. And we've got 64. 3 of them don't report. So we didn't have and they were the small rural ones, but there's 3 counties we just don't have information that we can include in this. But for the other 61, there was legitimate numbers that we could crunch to come up with the cost per county. What did you see there?
Wow. I was shocked by the numbers that we saw from Adams County. That was really kind of a surprise to me as we went through it county by county. And if your listeners are interested, Adams County and Denver combined for 40% of all crime in Colorado.
Unbelievable.
Now that's about 21% of the state's population, but 40% of the crime is happening in those two counties in the last year. Adams County's got the highest concentration of crimes against persons, and then Alamosa follows that, and that's per capita. Obviously Alamosa's not nearly the size as far as population goes as Adams County, but it's kind of shocked that Adams County stood out like it did, George.
Well, I did too. Adams is one of the top counties in terms of population in the state. And so that says something. Now, for instance, in that top list, there's also counties like Gilpin County, and that's a per capita concentration-based thing. But you can understand Gilpin. It's not because Gilpin is lawless. It's because they have the casinos up in Gilpin. So they're drawing a whole bunch of people that don't live in Gilpin up there, and many of them end up running afoul of the law for one reason or another. And those numbers get added on top of a very small population. So you can see why their numbers are big. You can't use that justification for Adams or Denver.
No, well, Denver is always, when I was the district attorney of Denver, Denver used to always be, about a quarter of the violent crimes in the state of Colorado would happen in Denver. And as you know, Denver was the smallest judicial district in the state of Colorado. It was just Denver. That's all I was responsible for. But we always had a high number of violent crimes, and I'd like to dig down with Stephen and his team, who, by the way, they did a phenomenal job again on this report, is how much of this is located around, we've done ones with neighborhoods in Denver. How much of this is located around DIA, and that growing area out there with all kinds of parking lots with cars in them, all kinds of, that area out there. I don't know if you've driven through it recently, George, but, all kinds of hotels and all those things that are actually in Adams County, because DIA is out there, sitting as part of Denver, but it's sitting there in the, right in the county of Adams County. And I wonder how much property crime, especially is happening out in that region.
That's a fair point. And you were right to point out too, that one of the prior reports we did had DIA as like car theft central for this part of the state of Colorado, if not this region in the country. That's a great question. Maybe that's one that we drill down on to see how much of a driver that is for crime. The combination of Adams and Denver, 21% of the state's population, to be the source of 40% of the crime. And you said before, look, when you were DA, Denver accounted for about 25% of the violent crime. Now it's Adams. Adams is just about 24% of the violent crime in the state of Colorado comes out of Adams County. I don't know if that can be related to DIA. I mean, it's got to be customer service related, like missing luggage goes violent or something, but there's something going on in Adams County. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's sad to say, and, I know the district attorney out there, he's doing a good job.
Brian's a good dude. Brian's a good dude. No doubt.
And, a lot of my former deputies moved out there and are working out there now. Lamar Sims, Tim Twining, and those are dedicated prosecutors that know what they're doing. They can handle this, but, a lot of this crime, as you know, George, goes unsolved, goes unprosecuted, just because of things like inability to prove the identification of the people involved. So it is a problem. It's a problem that needs to be addressed. I'm sure out there in Adams, they're facing the same kind of shortage of people signing up to be law enforcement as they are everywhere else in the state of Colorado. I imagine that, their sheriff's department is down officers, that all the cities out there in Adams are down officers. And, across the state, cities and counties are desperate to get good people to be police officers, to be sheriffs. And that's one of the things that we're all confronted with, is the shortage of manpower to do this important job.
I saw that on the growth or decrease in the numbers of crimes. And there's a chart in here. The other thing I love about this report is it's designed for somebody like me. And that is someone who is not a big time reader anymore for leisure or anything. There's 25 pages of it, but honestly, there's so many great graphs and other infographics or whatever that are in there. It's easy to appreciate. One of them is about changes in average monthly crime rate based on different kinds of crime. One of the good things that comes out of this from 2021 to 2022 is that there's a 14%, maybe it's 12% decrease in sexual assaults and rapes. That's huge. That's fantastic stuff. But if you look at the rest of it, even some of the things that we might take a little bit of pride in, like for instance, I'd read somewhere that homicides in Denver decreased by 8%. Well, that's huge. We love that. And yet at the same time, New York City saw an 11% decrease in homicides. Los Angeles saw a decrease of like 20+% in their homicides. And while it's not always apples to apples, I wonder if we're just not tackling crime the way other cities are. And that's why we're not seeing the same benefits they are.
Well, George, what really drives these costs up are crimes like homicide. Because if you think about a young person getting killed, their life, that's really a huge cost to the people of the state of Colorado, because the way that they figure these costs is how much money would this person have made over their life, that type of thing. It is good news about sexual assault and rape because, the same type of things. Those are very costly crimes. The victims need years and years of counseling. All of those costs are part of what we face. So it's good to see that down. But, the sad news is I was over at CSI, I think on Monday, and they say it looks like 18% increase in homicides so far this year. They were interested in looking at all these different shootings that have been going on. So, we had a banner year. It was a record year in 2021 for homicides across the state of Colorado. It went down in 2022, but I think we're looking for another bad year when it comes to homicides this year.
Putting the gun in Gunnison, or maybe it's now Murderson, they had a huge increase in homicides too, but that's a little deceptive in that if you have like no murders in a year or one murder in a year, and then it triples or you have 4, all of a sudden it's like 400% increase in murder, but it's not the same thing as maybe an increase of 5 or 6 murders in Denver. So some of it we got to put in perspective here. The other city that jumped out to me as what is going on there is Pueblo.
Yeah. Well, Pueblo was a standout last year in our report. You remember, George, when we looked at the national rankings of Pueblo was in the top 10 for every crime category.
Every category.
Yeah. And so the problems down in Pueblo persist. I was surprised, like I said, when Adam jumped out the way it did, that wasn't Pueblo. I expected Pueblo again to be, a big part of this report. And, obviously the cost down there to the people of Pueblo is very high, but, I'll wait to see. We'll have to wait and see if we do that same statistical comparison and see where Denver sits in the top 10, where Pueblo sits, and the different categories.
We're talking with Mitch Morrissey, former Denver D.A., current criminal justice fellow for CSI. Now, this isn't in the report. We didn't provide a great number of prescriptions to cure this thing, but I want to jump on this. There's going to be a new mayor. MMJ is going to take over here next Tuesday. And I'm going to make you an informal advisor, unsolicited informal advisor of this. But if you were going to give advice to the mayor of Denver of what the mayor can do, and the mayor, we've talked before about what impact can the mayor have over the DA and all this other stuff. If you're giving advice to the mayor about how to drive down these numbers for Denver, what advice do you give?
It's simple. Get your police department back up to force. Last time I looked, I think the numbers, they were down like 300 officers. Somebody asked me about, during the Nuggets celebration after they won, about the 9 people, the shootings down there. There were 2 shootings, 9 people shot. And the Gazette, actually, the editor there asked me, well, what would you tell the incoming mayor? Get your police department back up to strength. That's the number one thing. That Lodo will continue to haunt you. It will be a problem. It'll be a thorn in your side as long as you don't have officers to handle the calls and the things that are necessary throughout the city. Certainly at closing time, or when you have a celebration, when you have that many people out on the street, you need the officers out there. You got to get that department back up to full strength.
The former chief of police, Paul Pazin, also now a fellow with the Crime Scene Institute, has said too, you can't just flip a switch and fill all those open spaces because of ongoing attrition due to, injuries, retirements, or people just moving on. You have this constant flow of openings. And while you're trying to backfill, it's like a years-long process to try to do that.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that the chief now actually extended the class and made it a bigger class, because he did have people, recruits coming in order to try to see that they were going to, build back their strength. But, with the attrition, with the people retiring, a lot of it has to do with the personal liability of police officers in the state of Colorado. And I wish the legislature would go back and take a look at the impact on that. George, they didn't make DAs personally responsible.
Not yet.
They certainly
Not
didn't
yet.
do judges. They didn't do legislators. Everybody makes mistakes in their profession, and to draw law and make law enforcement personally liable, I think has really hurt the ability to retain good officers and to recruit people to do that important job.
Well, tangentially related to that, and I don't know if you had the opportunity in your busy day to listen to the interview we did with Aurora City Mayor Mike Coffman, but there's a growing rift occurring between Denver and Aurora in terms of mutual aid based on this issue of indemnification by Denver of Aurora officers who participated and responded to the call for help in those post-George Floyd things. Now, as DA, you don't deal with that stuff. That's not a you thing. I get that. But as a Mr. Denver guy, as a guy who grew up there and his family goes back forever there, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a problem. The thing that kind of came into play right at the end was Aurora would come when we'd have a fatal police shooting. They would send 2 detectives, and it was part of a requirement of the law. We had a very intense police shooting protocol. We added Aurora officers to that, and they helped us with those cases. It's my understanding they no longer do that.
Oh, wow.
And Denver's had to partner with CBI in order to be in compliance with the state law. And I think that it has something to do with that, George. But, I responded to fatal shootings where Aurora officers came into Denver. As well as I do that these predators, these criminals, do not respect the borders. And oftentimes an officer has to come in from another jurisdiction and gets involved in something that may lead to litigation, may lead to even possible criminal charges. And it's just, you just can't do the job that way. You can't hit the border of Aurora and stop when you're chasing a violent guy, when you're chasing an armed suspect. And you have to go into Denver, or Denver officers have to go into Aurora. And I think that the different cities have to recognize that.
I think the other thing you point out, which is somewhat common sense, but people need to hear it, and that is if you have a police force who runs through the list of potential action items that include at the very top, will I be sued for this? Am I going to lose my house for this? Am I going to lose my retirement or my kid? If that's the process they're going through, it's going to freeze them from being proactive, 1, but 2, making some of the decisions that keep us safe and hold some of these folks accountable. And that in part, too, has to be why crime is so persistent in the Denver metro area, to include Adams County. We just can't seem to get a hold of it.
And George, the thing that no one seems to understand up at the Capitol is the criminals are paying attention. They know, where the boundaries are. They know what they can get away with. They know that the officers aren't going to chase them. They know, they know certain things about the rules and the things that have been set up. That's the thing that has always astonished me, is that nobody gives these career criminals the credit. They know the law. They know the policies of the department. They know if they are in a stolen car and they take off and start eluding the officer, they know they're not going to get chased in Denver. Maybe the helicopter will monitor them if it's up and flying. But, these guys know and they understand, and that's why they're able to get away with what they get away with. They also understand that the criminal justice system is not going to hold them accountable. They're going to get a PR bond from a Denver judge, and they're going to be back out on the street stealing cars the next night. That's the way the system is working now. I think that it's a big part of why we have the crime rate that we have and why we have such a great cost to the Coloradoans.
Well, and on the back end too, those are all great points, is that even once convicted, the reluctance of judges to send quote unquote low level offenders to prison is another thing. And you're right. These criminals are smart. And it's not because they read the law or they read the newspaper. It's not that. They're experiential learners. And so they know what happens when they don't get arrested, or when they get arrested and cut loose, or they see their fellows get arrested, prosecuted, and then back out on the street. They are experiential learners, and they are smart and capable of adjusting.
Yeah, and the sad thing is, I think the criminal justice system has all these people under supervision, but they're out on the street. They may be on parole, probation, on a PR bond, and they're out there committing serious offenses. I don't know if it was Chief Pazin's report, one of our reports, but it was well over 30%, I believe, in 2001. People under the supervision of the criminal justice system committed murders. That's in
insane.
Denver.
That's nuts.
Yeah, well, I guess being under the supervision of probation doesn't mean anything. It does help sometimes. It helps you solve the murder case that the person was involved in, because they're wearing,
you got the ankle monitor,
ankle bracelet,
that's right. Yeah.
It
didn't save a life, but you got him.
It didn't save the life. It didn't protect the Coloradoan, but it helped. It helped us prosecute the person because they were being supervised, and that's just sad, George.
It's sad. I think in the future too, and this is a little bit how the CSI sausage gets made, but I know we're going to take a deeper dive on district attorneys, something that you and I know something about, and sort of some of the decisions that are made, whether it's on plea bargaining, sentencing, bond, all that other stuff, and trying to take a look at how district attorneys also impact crime and the criminal justice system. I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah, I think that the rate that they file cases, all of those kinds of things will be interesting for your readers. George, I got to tell you, I've been getting compliments. I got one last night. Hey, I've been reading those reports you guys put out. I really enjoy knowing these things. Some guy I hadn't seen for a couple of years, he just said, yeah, I've been going online, been going to CSI. I find those reports really interesting. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I wanted to pass that on to you, George, because you're, it's important. You're a fellow there. Your voice is incredibly important in these reports. And I just want to thank you for being part of this team.
Look, I really appreciate that. I'm flattered. I hear the different comments, like, why are you dragging Mitch down? Or why does Mitch look younger than you? I mean, stuff like that. I don't get the substantive things. I get most of the criticism, and I just shrug. And I'm like, I don't know. But we're going to keep doing this as long as they're willing to have us get this information together. I don't know anybody else that's doing this, man. Like this would be something you might expect the media 30 years ago to do, because they had way more resources. They just don't. So it really does take someone like the Common Sense Institute, an organization like that, a nonprofit, to get together and say, we're going to tackle this stuff. And they're not just about criminal justice stuff at all, too. They do the energy and the homelessness. They do all that other stuff, too. But for our purposes, nobody is doing this work.
Yeah, it's an incredible think tank, and it doesn't take sides. It just lays out the facts. And, I know that they are going to start looking at some medical issues. They just added Dr. Reggie Washington, who's an incredible resource. He's recently retired. They've added him as a fellow to the Common Sense Institute. I think that the listeners really need to go online, look at the Common Sense Institute. I guarantee you, if you're not interested in crime, there'll be a report there that you'll be interested in reading, and it will talk about the costs to you and the other Coloradoans here. If it's housing, I've sat and listened to some of these other fellows, and they are incredibly smart people, George. They got us beat by a long shot. But this Common Sense Institute does some really incredible work. I had one reporter say, I said, what's your problem with this organization? He goes, well, they're kind of punching above their weight. I said, they're talking about crime. They're talking about homelessness. They're talking about the impact of inflation on Coloradoans.
Yeah.
All of these things matter to us. So thank God they're out there punching, because no one else is doing it.
Well, I would say punching above my weight, but for the fact that I've put on 35 pounds since I took over this radio show. So I don't think I am anymore, but I get your point. Also, you and I have sat on some of these panels where we're the criminal justice person, but they have the other folks. I remember being down in the Springs on one, and I ended up having this guy on to talk about the housing issue, because I'm sitting there listening, and you're right. I feel like I'm the fraud on these panels. All these other people not only have better credentials, but they've all done more things. And I'm sitting there listening like, oh man, I'm the dude in the dunce cap at the end of this line. There are some wicked smart people there. I get how they picked you. I still don't understand how they ended up with me. I think they're like, we need to make Mitch look even better. Let's get dopey. And so anyway, congratulations on that.
I don't think you remember it right, George. You had them call me.
I did.
So, well, you were a big part of me getting on the team. It wasn't, they had you first. They made a great selection. You are an expert in this area. There are areas we haven't even touched on that you have far more expertise than anybody in the state of Colorado, maybe nationally. So you sell yourself short, George. I always appreciate being there. Being part of these panel discussions and being part of these reports. And a big part of it is that I'm a partner with you, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate that, man. And listen, check out the report. And I agree with Mitch. That's the place to go, is Common Sense Institute CO. The CO is for Colorado, because that's the other thing. This model is blowing up all over the country. I think we're in Arizona. I keep begging them to start one in Hawaii, but commonsenseinstituteco.org. And you can find this report as well as a bunch of others and the back reports that we have there. It's good stuff. It's just the information. Mitch Morrissey, former Denver district attorney. Thanks, my friend, for being on for so long.
Hey, thanks for having me, George. I appreciate it.
Talk to you soon, man. Hey, we're going to cut away for a long overdue break, because once again, I'm just sucking here at the whole time management thing. Today is going to go, I think it's because it's the 13th. It's going to go down in the books as the day George ruined talk radio in the morning. Actually, that might actually be the day I took over for Pete. This will be the second day that George ruined talk radio. Stick around. George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. My thanks to Mitch Morrissey, former Denver District Attorney and current Criminal Justice Fellow at the Common Sense Institute, along with me about the report that just got released. You can find it at Common Sense Institute CO. I'm going to slow down just a moment and re-say it. Common Sense Institute CO.org. Go out there and find that report and all the other good ones that they do there. I am going to be on Colorado Inside Out tomorrow. If you don't watch that PBS 12 product, they've had me on, man, a handful of times. It's kind of cool. They have folks on there, and we're going to talk about this issue. That's why I bring it up. We're going to actually talk about the Common Sense Institute report and some crime stuff. They have folks on from across the political spectrum, but also across I don't know, the industry perspective. Not everybody isn't necessarily a media person. I know that on today's show, of course, they're going to have Patty Calhoun, who knows everything there is to know about Denver. Patty, of course, the editor-in-chief of Westword. And then we're also going to have on Chris O'Rourke from the Denver Business Journal. But then they always end up having other folks on. Like we've had people on who don't come from the media, who are just part of either local government or a nonprofit or just in the know in Denver. They're not all D's. They're not all R's. I think in many cases I am the token R, but and by token I mean smoking marijuana. No, I'm kidding. I don't do that. I never have. But that'll be on tomorrow. I'll prime the pump for that tomorrow for you to watch it when it comes on in the evening and tell you about how it went. I keep thinking there's going to be a fisticuff that breaks out. It never does. I mean, I kind of hope for it. Like maybe some sort of a slapping match between me and O'Rourke or Patty Calhoun or something, but it never turns into that. I just, they're such good people and we have such good, I think, good conversations, and they're short and to the point answers. Like there is a timer that tells you when you're at it. Like you will talk for 1 minute and then get off the TV, and it works out great. Anyway, on this crime thing, I wanted to ask your opinion on this, especially if you're in Adams County. Do you feel it up there? Do you feel the crime? Like I report on it all the time. I follow it intimately. I have a perverse interest, not just as a rubbernecker and a media guy, but as the once and potentially future prosecutor out of that jurisdiction that I live in. I just don't know. Like I see it and hear it from the folks that work it on the front lines. I see it and hear it from my buddies who are still in the DA's office, like John Kellner. I see it and hear it from the media. But knock on wood, I haven't felt it yet. I haven't had a car stolen. Knock on wood for that too. I live in a pretty comfortable neighborhood where you don't see the police roll in and around, other than as probably a visible deterrent to those who might come and solicit your home for a sale when they shouldn't. But we just don't have anything like that. Every once in a while, there is maybe a gun goes off somewhere at a distant part of the community, and it turns into an immediate law enforcement response and all that. But I don't feel it directly. And I wonder if that isn't part of the problem with what's going on in the metro area. And here's how it's supposed to work. You have failed government, and failed government by the metrics that are out there, whether it's the economy is struggling and it's not doing well, or people don't feel safe and public safety is on the ropes. Those things exist, and yet we continue to send the same people whose hands were on the levers when those bad things happened back into a position to keep their hands on those levers so they can happen again. And part of me wonders if, despite the data, despite the anecdotes and the media coverage and the statistics, all that other stuff, despite all that, people just aren't feeling the crime. I can't imagine that they're indifferent to it, but maybe they're just not feeling it. I'd love to hear from you at 303-696-1971. Have you been the victim of crime in the last, I don't know, we'll go back at least until Governor Polis took over. So let's go back to 2018. Have you felt crime? Not because you've heard about it from a friend, but have you felt it? Have you been the victim of a crime? Or is this just something that we talk about on the radio, something that the Common Sense Institute highlights with the data that they've culled together from across the state of Colorado? I don't know the answer to that, but I haven't felt it. And by the way, I just got a text. Why did I call Chris O'Rourke? Because she drinks like an Irishman. That's it. That's all I'm going to, it could have been Mick Rourke, but I just went with O because of the abuse the liver takes. I'm kidding. Just probably because I'm on the radio here screwing up the time and all that other stuff. Here's another text. Here's a crazy and very high-tech idea for you. How about on your phone, you set an alarm for times like 6:20 or 6:25, Monday through Friday. That would remind you to take the breaks timely. Listen, I know that sounds super easy. And maybe if I said, hey, Alexa, set an alarm for 6:20 or 6:20. Now I got to look and see if I actually triggered. Nope. I could do that. I just think it changes the very fluid nature of the show. I'm not Hugh Hewitt, man. I can't do the hard breaks in and out like that. And I'm just not built for that. I'm built for when I run out of things to say, we cut away for a break or Billy just cuts me off. It says, or I can just come in studio with my Nerf gun and shoot you with Nerf bullets when you should be taking your breaks. That's probably more preferable. I think that's probably better. Another one. Good morning, Billy and George. Remember, as my dad used to say, an expert is a drip under pressure. So when Mitch says you are an expert, keep things in focus.
Could we change the Nerf darts to actual darts?
In the old days, we could have. I don't even think. Can you buy actual darts anymore?
Well, I know that you can make them. You and your younger brother have that experience.
Oh, that was a long time ago.
I know, but you at least have experience making darts.
God,
that's what we
Eric,
can do.
Thank God Eric doesn't listen to the podcast and he's in Minnesota now, because I'm sure that story would be triggering for him.
Yeah, I'm impressed you guys did it with the BB gun, because we did it as kids, but we did it with blowguns. We tried, pipes and straws and things like that.
Okay,
not as good.
There's that.
That's much more efficient.
There was
though.
the spit wads in school and all that stuff too. Billy, I just asked this question while you were chatting it up with Kelly. Have you been the victim of a crime since 2018? Since right before Polis took over? And I asked that in the context of, we have all the numbers, we have all the statistics, we know what's happening, we know some, but in terms of listeners and the folks here, do you feel it? Have you felt it? Has your neighbor's car been stolen? That kind of thing?
No, we have not been victim of crimes. We have friends that have had some things happen, but nothing directly to us, which has been kind of nice. We've had some of the online stuff happen, but that's not local. That's things
online stuff.
Yeah, things like people hacking into passwords and things like someone got into
the Chinese.
Yeah, someone got into one of the PayPal accounts, and it wasn't a lot of money, but it was about little tiny increments of stuff, but they got about $50 before we were able to turn all the stuff off. So not a big deal. But I've had friends that have lost catalytic converters.
Oh my!
Friends that have had houses broken into, cars broken into, not near us. So I feel like it's somewhat separated.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, the neighborhood's been pretty good. I haven't felt that, but however, I have been more aware going out with the family and being in other places, especially out milling around with the general public. I've been much more conscious of potential threats and what is going on. And I dislike that. I dislike that feeling where I have to have my spider sense running the entire time.
But you have that feeling from the media coverage?
No, I just in general, based on statistics, just based on what I've heard from friends and family, and then some of the media coverage. But some of the coverage of the media is just base statistics. Just, hey, this is going on. And I also want to let Lou down the hall. I've turned off my camera, and you can't see him on the rumbles because I was having yogurt this morning, and evidently eating and feeding myself is still new to me.
Yeah,
I didn't do the best
job. If you're
going
to try to blame that neck-high stain on yogurt, buddy, we're going to have to have
here's the thing is, this is what happened is, so I've got a polo on, and there are 3 buttons, and right below the bottom button, that is where the yogurt-covered blueberry from the Yoplait hit, and then it decided to slowly roll in a line down the rest of the shirt.
Listen, the first time I heard that story, it was from someone named Monica Lewinsky. So please don't go there with your story of, whoa, like, it's yogurt. I swear, it's just yogurt on there. I don't know how it got all over the front of my pants. I get it. I understand.
Exactly.
Yeah. Listen, we're going to cut away for a break, but not before I tell you about a cool text we have. We have a text from an actual listener who said, hey, I'm at Twin Aspen Dental for my cleaning, and said they're going to give me my great smile back. Do you know how happy that makes me to hear that? That tells me, one, they're not listening live probably while the show is going on, but I get it. But an actual listener here has texted in to say, and it's not the first one. I'm at Twin Aspen Dental getting my cleaning. I'm so excited. I'm so glad that I did it. That makes me feel great. I think it makes them feel great too. So the bottom line is this. If you're not in love with your dentist, and I mean in a way that won't lead them to kill their spouse, okay? I'm saying if you are not in love with your dentist and you're open to the idea of making a change, of transitioning, if you will, I'm saying give Twin Aspen Dental Center a shot. These are folks that just do it differently. They have a much more small town community, like your local dentist feel, than some of the big box store chain things. that are out there. Doctors Richter and Snyder are phenomenal. Their staff so nice, so welcoming, frankly, funny, at least Shiloh that I've dealt with. And I know she's funny because she courtesy laughs at all of my jokes and sometimes joins in on them. I'm saying give them a shot. And even if you're thinking, well, what about insurance and all this? These guys have their own plan. If you don't have the insurance that they take, and they take every kind of insurance you can imagine, I know because I'm a TRICARE guy. So if you're a veteran, they take TRICARE. That's legit. They also have plans that will help you get to that place you need to be with the twice-a-year cleanings and all that other stuff. Give them a call, 303-841-7466, 303-841-7466, or check them out at twinaspendentalcenter.com, twinaspendentalcenter.com. When we come back, probably a couple seconds of silence followed by the news. I have no idea what's coming up next. It's been that day. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Couple texts. If you follow the Nextdoor app, which is in most neighborhoods, there are postings every day about vehicle and retail theft. Today's posting is people leaving Big Lots in Lakewood with a full cart of detergent. This type of theft occurs almost constantly, and people are told to do nothing, including store employees. These things will eventually restrict our freedom because we won't have any retail shopping. For cars, anyone without a garage is just vulnerable to the crime cruisers. For banking, we lost a couple thousand, with an ATM thief who was apparently on camera, but the money wasn't enough to bother looking for him. George and Billy, you're right on today, cracking me up. Thank you. And then here's another one. I live in Denver, had my Jeep stolen about a year ago. Stripped it, took the tires, hard top, both doors, and the back seat. Good Lord. You know they were doing that just to find a warm place to stay. That's what the Libbies under the Gold Dome say. Listen, when we come back, I want to shift topics a bit. I'm sorry about all the texts I can't respond to. I want to talk to you about a hearing that took place out in Congress yesterday with a guy named Chris Wray. He's in charge of the FBI for the moment. Ken Buck played a role. We'll talk about that when we come back. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here. Final hour of the Thursday show for the George Show, 710 KNUS. There was a big old hearing that took place yesterday in Washington, D.C. It was in the House Judiciary Committee. It was in part televised on Fox News. I know that because it was going on here inside the studio as we were having our other conversations. I've reached out to Congressman Ken Buck's office. He serves on the Judiciary Committee. He's one of the senior folks on there, maybe the third ranking dude on that committee. Could have been the chair, but for the fact that it went to Jim Jordan. But Ken, as you know, former federal prosecutor, former elected district attorney up there in the fight in 19th, that's Weld County. I thought he could bring some great insights into this. Now, we have some clips from him. We'll play to those things, but I'd reached out to the office to see if we can't get him on board. Couldn't do it today, but maybe we'll get him on tomorrow. That doesn't mean you and I can't have a conversation about this. Now, I don't know if you had a chance to watch the hearing. I didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing, but I've watched a bunch of clips and I've read a bunch of this thing. And this was, I guess it was exactly as it was billed to be. And that was an opportunity for Republicans to try to get answers or hold accountable Christopher Wray, the currently beleaguered FBI director. Now, remember back in 2017, after James Comey was fired by President Trump, he went and handpicked this dude, another Republican, to be the director of the FBI. And since then, it has seemed like Republicans, at least in Congress, a good number of them have soured upon him for a bunch of things, including the execution of the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. Some folks say the raid at Mar-a-Lago. He was asked about that yesterday. Some of it will be, hey, why didn't this happen with Hunter Biden? What's going on with, there's a letter that you may recall from the FBI's Richmond field office that talked about Catholic extremists. There was questions about that. There were questions about January 6th. And all of this was really directed at Christopher Wray. And it depends on which side of this conversation you're on. If you're on the side that you believe that the FBI is corrupt, and folks, if you've listened to this show for more than 10 seconds, you know there's a number of people that we have on who call in and text in who are convinced that the FBI is, and I'm using the words they use, rotten to the core, that it is rotten top to bottom, that it needs to be completely destroyed or disassembled or defunded or whatever it is. This, in some ways, I think, is a precursor to more of those discussions. And if you're on the other side of the aisle, you look at this and say exactly what guys like Ted Lieu and others have said, and that is, this was performance art. I mean, this was performative. This wasn't real questioning. It was never going to generate any different or helpful information to the public. It was always going to be just about Republicans throwing haymakers at the director of the FBI, really in an effort to try to protect Donald Trump. That's what they would say. The folks that are on the Republican side of things, and you've got different folks here on this committee. You've got Jim Jordan. He's obviously a hardcore conservative. He hates sports coats and suits coats. I don't know that he owns any. He despises them. He also despises cuffs around your wrists because his shirts are always, and I'm going to give credit, by the way, to Mike Coffman on this. Mike, I think, popularized that look when he was in Congress, but nonetheless, Jim Jordan has it now. Very conservative, also a big fan of the DJT. And so you can predict some of the questions that he would ask. And in a moment, we'll play some of his opening comments. But then there were guys like Matt Gaetz or Gates or whatever it is out of Florida. Don't know him other than his work on media and some of the stories that have broken about him and his compatriots and friends and efforts they've made at Romance. I don't know him other than that, and his involvement in the attempt to try to keep Kevin McCarthy from becoming the speaker. He was part of that group along with our own 3rd Congressional District Congresswoman Lauren Boebert to upend his efforts to become the speaker. That didn't work out, but he is on the Judiciary Committee. So he asked some questions too, and there's interesting sound. Now, one of the things that took place after this was there was an interview that involved Ken Buck on Jake Tapper's show. I think it was Jake Tapper. Am I saying that right? Was it CNN? I thought Jake Tapper was ABC, but maybe it was CNN. And we'll play that in just a second. I promise you. We'll get to that. But it was very interesting to me. And so we're going to have a discussion about the things that came up in part during this hearing yesterday, this all-day hearing. But I guess at the end of the day, and I want you to start thinking about how you're going to answer this, do you trust the FBI? I mean, is there any room for you to trust the FBI and what it does? Not just on the stuff regarding Trump, but on anything when it comes to interstate crime or kidnapping or terrorism or is there anything else that they can do to get back into your good graces? And if so, what is it? 303-696-1971. Do you trust the FBI? Is this just a Chris Wray issue or is this an organizational issue? Now, one of the issues that we discuss on the radio quite frequently is the fact that as you get older, and Billy and I are both getting older, the joints, the hips, the knees, the shoulders, elbows, neck, back, those are the things that start to show their wear. It's like a tread on a tire, but you can't change out these tires. What you can do, though, is say no to doctors who tell you the only solution to getting rid of your chronic pain is to go under the knife. You don't have to do that. Call up these folks at QC Kinetix. Great folks. First off, check them out online. That'll whet your palate for sure. But I'm asking you not to, as I'm sure they would hate it if I told you this. Do not make a decision about regenerative medicine just based off of what you see on the QC Kinetix website. Don't do that. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't let my brother or my sister do that, or my dad. I would say, hang on. I know you read a bunch of great stuff at qckinetics.com, but you can't just make a decision based off of that. Don't they have a way to reach a human being where you can ask questions? And the answer for QC Kinetix, unlike so many others, is yeah, they do. They have local medical professionals waiting for your phone call, not to high pressure sell you, but to give you the information that you want so that you can make the best decision for you or a loved one. So you just pick up the phone and dial 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986. Have that conversation with them. And once you're convinced, do it, man. You're going to walk out the same day you walk in. No big bandages with, drugs you have to take to keep infections from setting in. No long periods of rehabilitation. Just you getting back to you. That's qckinetics.com. 303-696-1971 is our phone number. Some of the text coming in. Ray was Chris Christie's attorney on Bridgegate. Ray kept Christie from going to jail. Christie recommended Ray to Trump for FBI director. One of Trump's biggest mistakes was trusting some people who did not put America first. I think you meant just the one not. And or were not guilty or not genuinely team Trump. Trump did not expect just how deep the swamp was. Even, by the way, before we get there, I hear that refrain a lot, by the way, from people, that they're like, well, if Trump picks someone, he can't be held accountable for the decisions they make if they're bad about Trump or someone else, because he just didn't realize they were bad. He didn't realize they were part of the deep state. Doesn't that tell you something? If that guy could be that naive about the people he puts in place, wouldn't that be something you'd want to question in terms of judgment? The best people. That's what he said. I'll put the best people. Here's one. Even with Wray being corrupt, and I need to see what that corruption looks like. Did he take money? Is there evidence of that? Is he getting some promised position after government service? I don't know. It says Wray could not have done what he did without the existing corruption in the FBI with people like Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Kevin Kleinsmith, etc. The coup against Trump started before Trump took office, and I guess Wray must be part of that attempted coup. Now, here's what I want to do, and we're getting more texts in, we're getting some calls in, and we'll take those at 303-696-1971. Do you trust the FBI? And is Christopher Wray part of some broader conspiracy or deep state to try to dethrone or keep out of the office President Trump? I don't know, but we're going to start here. The chairman of the House Judiciary Committee is a guy named Jim Jordan. He was a wrestler. He's also a big-time stalwart conservative and a good punch thrower as well. He had some opening comments in advance of testimony from Christopher Wray. Billy, do you have those?
In a survey last fall, 4 out of 5 Americans said they believe there's a two-tiered system of justice in America today. They said that because there is. They said that because of what they've witnessed. Think about what Americans have seen. National School Board Association, left-wing political group, writes the White House and asks them to treat parents at school board meetings as terrorists. And the Garland Justice Department does just that. They put together a memo, set up a dedicated line of threat communication, a snitch line on parents. As a result, parents get investigated by our FBI, get a threat tag associated with their name, 25 of them, because whistleblowers came and told us were investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Americans have seen the FBI's Richmond field office put together a memorandum saying pro-life Catholics are extremists. They've seen 20 FBI agents, SWAT team members, show up at the home of Mark Houck and arrest him in front of his wife and 7 children, even though he had indicated he'd be happy to turn himself in. And what was he arrested for? Him and his 12-year-old son were praying outside an abortion facility. Some guy starts screaming in his son's face, and he did what frankly any dad would do, defended his child. What's interesting is the National School Board Association apologized for the letter, but the Attorney General refuses to rescind his directive. The FBI did rescind, thank goodness, the Richmond Catholic Memorandum, but they refuse to tell Congress who wrote it and who approved it. And Mr. Houck, when he got his day in court, he was acquitted by a jury of his peers. American speech is censored. Parents are called terrorists. Catholics are called radicals. And I haven't even talked about the spying that took place of a presidential campaign or the raiding of a former president's home. But maybe what's more frightening is what happens if you come forward and tell Congress.
That's Jim Jordan. He is the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. These are his comments in advance of the questioning of FBI Director Christopher Wray, Donald Trump's handpicked FBI director from 2017. Now, some of the stuff that he refers into, some folks have already texted in on, and I'd love to have the conversation with you at 303-696-1971. This is a text. I began to question the integrity of the FBI after they labeled concerned parents at a school board meeting as domestic terrorists. Now, Christopher Wray was asked about this, and he said, look, I don't know of a single investigation that was ever opened up on a parent along the lines of what Jim Jordan has just said. Now, that's either true or it's not true. So if there's an investigation out there, it's either super secret or it happened. And you would imagine that a parent would come forward and say, I was the subject of that investigation. One of the things that the memo that it's referred to, and there was a memo in the Department of Justice that talked about this, was that it said that the FBI agents were to consider the motivation of any of these individuals if they engaged in criminal activity as to whether or not that criminal activity or that motivation violated some other federal law. Now, I don't like the idea that parents, even pissed off parents, and I've been one, showing up to a school board to say a whole bunch of things straight on at a school board, that should ever be the subject of any federal investigation. That ain't none their business. I mean, if you get the feeling that a parent is up there threatening a school board member, that's a call to the sheriff. That isn't a call to the FBI. I don't like the feds monitoring this at all. However, if there's something about that particular protest or that encounter that runs afoul of federal law where there is no corollary state law, well, then I think it needs to be investigated. I don't think you can shy away from that. But if this ends up just being a tool and this is how it's perceived, this is how I perceived it when it came out in the stories, that this was a tool of a Democrat Department of Justice to try to run to the aid of the National Education Association, the big teachers union, and to say, oh, we've got your back. We'll protect your members. We'll protect school, all this other stuff from those conservative right-wing parents or religious parents who want to come and voice their concerns, then I absolutely object. But at this point, there doesn't seem to be any evidence that a single investigation has opened up by virtue of whatever this memo was. And that's what Christopher Wray told Jim Jordan.
And also, I just want to add in that people leave out this point of the discussion as to why the red flag was raised in the first place to look at some of these parents. These school board members were receiving death threats. That is not okay. I agree with you. Going to the state rather than the feds.
Go to the state, right?
Absolutely. But it doesn't mean that the feds may not have a role when people are issuing death threats. There may be a law enforcement role. Maybe they should pass it down to the state. But sitting there and saying, oh, these parents were targeted unfairly. Here's an example of a letter that was sent to a school board member. It says, it's too bad that your mom is an ugly communist whore. If she does not quit as before the end of the year, we will kill her.
Oh my goodness.
First, we will kill you. That was a letter sent to the family's home.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
No.
So before you sit here and say that the DOJ targeted these parents unfairly, do just a little bit of research to realize what the school board members were facing across the country at the time. If you think it's okay to issue those death threats, call the phone. Tell us it's okay. If not, stop sitting here and telling us there was some sort of conspiracy that the DOJ was going after concerned parents. That's not a concerned parent.
If this happened in Douglas County, and it's independent of any sort of ideology or politics, because right now there's a 4-3 split on the school board in favor of conservatives. Even if that wasn't true, it wouldn't matter to me. If somebody sent a letter like that, of course it has to be investigated. The only reason I would ever involve the feds, and that would be reluctantly, is if we lack the resources or technology or something to try to determine who this was. But what I'm afraid of, Billy, is that we use a horrible, in my opinion, clear as day example like that, and we use it as the vehicle to authorize looking into a whole bunch of other parents who are just angry and upset at what the school board is doing to teach their kids. It's that bad apple thing, right? Like we're going to judge all cops by by Derek Chauvin out of Minnesota, who killed George Floyd. No, of course we're not going to do that. Well, we can't judge all of these. So when that kind of a letter, and I know it's not a one-off, but that kind of a letter engenders an entire Department of Injustice memo stream going back and forth to the FBI, I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah, and I would want to see that you had the average parent investigated rather than these parents. And the reason I think the FBI got involved was because it was happening in multiple districts across the country, that there was an overarching, and again, I'm not saying it's correct, but if I had to guess why they got involved is because they were seeing it replicated across the country. And I have yet to find a single instance of where they actually investigated someone who had not made any kind of a threat to a school board member. We had video of where there were school board members leaving the school after a meeting, and members of the community were yelling at them about how they're going to follow them home and kill them, yelling at them on video about it. I mean, that's not okay.
It's not okay. It is also, in my opinion, not federal. It's just not a federal issue. And my concern is that we have taken the Department of Justice, and for political reasons, which is to kowtow to the NEA, they've said, of course, we'll use federal resources to look into this. I don't want to hear from the feds unless, as the local prosecutor or the local sheriff or police, I call for them to help me. Now, they can reach out and say, hey, if you guys need help tracking these people down, let us know. We'll use our resources. But I don't want Merrick Garland uttering anything about any issue related to parents at a school board meeting unless it is so clearly an act of some kind of terrorism or something. But beyond that, I don't want the feds involved in this. It is horrible behavior. It is likely criminal, but I want the locals to handle it, because this is what happens when the feds get involved here. Then it allows people who are FBI naysayers to say, here's another example. Here they are targeting parents because parents say this kind of thing. 303-696-1971 is the number. We're going to cut away for a break, but not before I tell you about a friend of the show, Dan Caplis. Then I'll tell you about some of the texts that have come in here, including friend of the show, Joan. She's got some, she says, firsthand experience with this whole thing. But Dan Caplis is the DJC, not the DJT, the DJC. And he and Babar Wahid, I guess that's the B-dubs. DJC and B-dubs. Sounds like we could make a bit of a song or something out of that. They're out there fighting the good fight day in and day out. And frankly, they're the kind of people that stand up for the little guy. So and they don't do criminal defense work. I mean, that's not their bag. Their bag is, listen, we want to help you get justice in the civil court of arena. If somebody has harmed you, it doesn't matter if it was an accident, if it was their negligence or recklessness or whatever. If it's the kind of thing that has changed your life and taken something of that quality of life away, or to a lower level, you don't have to just suck it up and move on. It's not, hey, accidents happen. That's not the world that we live in. In almost every single circumstance, somebody has done something wrong that led to your unfortunate and unjust injury. And if you're going to try to right that ship, the one person that you reach out to is Dan Caplis. And you can call Dan at 303-770-5551. And his team will, first off, super nice, super customer-oriented people, client-oriented people. They'll talk you through it. They'll talk you through the issue, and they'll let you know, yep, this is the kind of thing we can help you with. Or if not, they'll figure out where you can get help. They don't just hang up like, well, that's not for us, move up. That's not how they work. They're interested in helping you. If not themselves personally, they'll find the people that can get it done. And when they sign up with you and you sign up with them, and it's mutual, right? Like one doesn't just pick, you both pick. When that happens, buckle up, because this is going to be a ride that's going to take you all the way through a process that most people shudder at having to get into because it seems so foreign and so wrought with peril and landmines. Well, Dan's been doing this thing for decades. He knows how to navigate all those treacherous waters and get you to some calmer, better place. So call him at 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551. Get to know a little bit more about Dan, though, by going to Dan Caplis Law. That's Caplis, Caplis, dancaplis.law.com. When we come back, all the texts that are coming through, we got more sound to play from the hearing and Ken Buck's interview afterwards. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Here are some of the texts so far on this topic. We'll get to some of the sound in just a moment. George, too much smoke for there not to be some fire here. I think the FBI has lost credibility. For instance, the claim that Antifa is just an idea. And I asked, I hadn't heard that. Maybe that's true, but who said it is just an idea? I don't think Antifa is just an idea. But when you say there's smoke, and I'd ask the texter to call in, what does that mean? There's too much smoke. Like, there's a lot of things that are being said, and some of them definitely need to be scrutinized and investigated. But some of these things are just like talking points that the far right have put out that people then say, well, did you hear this? Did you hear that? I will say this. I was talking with a guy yesterday, small business guy, does blinds and stuff like that. Good dude. And he was talking about too, like, he feels like Jim Jordan said, that there is this two-tiered justice system. And I wonder if there isn't an answer to it, that yes, there is one, but it's not what you think. I think when people say that politically, they're talking about, well, there's a two-tiered justice system. There's one for when Democrats go after Republicans, and there's one for Democrats who go and they don't get molested by this. I do think, and Billy had said this off air, and I believe that if there's a two-tier justice system, it ain't about the R and the D. It's about the money, man. It's about the big money. If you got money, there's almost nothing that you can't figure out a way around, especially when compared to other people. And that to me is the Hunter Biden thing. That's the Hunter Biden story. If he's getting a break, I don't know that it has as much to do with the fact that daddy's president, although that's legit. I mean, there's an issue there with the jobs he's had with Ukraine and China and all that. But I think it's more to do with the money and the influence piece, separate from the ideological part. But Ted Lieu, who I'm no fan of Ted Lieu. Dude's a big lefty congressman from California who has played in our local races. Ted Lieu endorsed John Kellner's opponent, who at the time I think had prosecuted an entire DUI by herself. By the way, she's probably going to run for DA here. I think she has been running for DA since she lost it to John. But Ted Lieu has weighed in on her race as well. This guy is nobody's version of a conservative, but he makes a point here in this clip we're going to play, and it's not one you can just shrug off. If you have an answer to this, to what Ted Lieu says, I'd like to hear it. Billy.
I'm going to ask you a series of basic questions to get facts out to American people about our system of justice. Trump advisor Roger Stone was convicted in a federal court, correct?
That's my recollection.
Trump donor Elliot Brady was convicted in a federal court, correct?
Also my recollection.
The Attorney General at the time for those two convictions was Bill Barr. Which president nominated Bill Barr for Attorney General?
President Trump.
Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, was convicted on two separate occasions in a federal court, correct?
I believe that's correct.
The Attorney General at the time for Cohen's second conviction was Matthew Whitaker. Which president appointed Matthew Whitaker as acting Attorney General?
President Trump.
Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, was convicted in a federal court, correct?
Yes.
Trump's former deputy campaign manager, Mr. Gates, was convicted in a federal court, correct?
That's my recollection.
Trump's campaign foreign policy advisor, George Papadopoulos, was convicted in a federal court, correct?
Yes, I think he pled guilty, yes.
The Attorney General at the time of those three cases was Jeff Sessions. Which president nominated Jeff Sessions for Attorney General?
President Trump.
You were the FBI director for all of those cases at the time. Which president nominated you?
President Trump.
Okay. What these facts show is we don't have a two-tiered system of justice. We have one Department of Justice that goes after criminals regardless of party ideology. All of these folks were convicted under the administrations of three separate Republican attorneys general. It is not the fault of the FBI that Donald Trump surrounded himself with criminals.
We don't need that last part, but I do think the points he's made up until that last little dig are ones that have to be addressed. How do you address the fact that Republican AGs put in place by the Republican president, that's DJT, went after all of these folks who are in Trump's orbit? The only answers that are available are, you know what? You're right. The Department of Justice has focused on a bunch of people independent of who appointed them into positions, and all they did it based on where the evidence took them. Or you have to do what this other texter did at the beginning of this segment and at the beginning of the hour and say that, oh, well, Trump was just duped into putting Christopher Wray in the FBI. Trump was duped into putting Bill Barr into the Attorney General's office. Trump was too naive in suggesting that Jeff Sessions somehow would have his back. And I mean, you would have to believe that Donald Trump's ability to identify both competent, qualified, law-following, and loyal people is really damaged. Or there's something else going on, and that something else is maybe there's not as much smoke as we think. Now, I leave open the possibility that the FBI has done a bunch of things. I still question how the Hillary Clinton thing was handled with the server in the bathtub here in Denver. I still question that. And I think it's appropriate that you find those things and highlight them for the FBI as, hey, I don't trust what you did here. Explain this to me. But to simply take all of these things, and if your answer, again, the answer is one of two things. It was, well, the FBI is corrupt and the deep state is so much more pervasive than Donald Trump ever thought, and that's how all these things happened. Or, and let's go Gordian knot here, or dude surrounds himself with a bunch of people who ran afoul of the law, who are then held accountable by a bunch of other people he surrounded himself with. That's it. Those are the only choices. I don't see a third way. But what it feels like is the FBI is corrupt. That's what we hear more often than not, especially on this show and with some listeners. Not everybody. We get some other texts. But here's some of the other ones that have come in here. George, I trust the FBI about as far as I can throw Rosie O'Donnell. And then I'd asked, hey, man, where's the thing where he says that Antifa is just an idea? And they said that Ray made that claim in a congressional hearing. And then they just sent me the audio clip, which I can't hear in this particular studio. Another one, the FBI surveillance also occurred against Puerto Rican citizens who wanted independence. This event is referred to as the Carpetas. This was going on in the 1950s. So none of this with parents surprises me. Good Lord. Something from the 50s is now visited upon this same organization with entirely different people. My guess is all those people have moved on to the afterlife since. You have to believe that this is some kind of cultish organization to be able to transfer those kinds of things from generation to generation of employees. And those employees are called FBI agents. You believe that what happened in the 50s with that organization is just completely consistent and frankly follows and flows from that event into what's alleged here with these parents? You believe that? I mean, does that mean that the Minnesota Police Department can never again ever be trusted because Derek Chauvin knelt on a guy and killed him? Is that how it goes? Every act of police misconduct for an organization dictates the fact that they can no longer be trusted because this is part and parcel of that? I mean, law enforcement agencies in the South used to target black people and disappear them and do other things. That means that's it. Well, you know, the Atlanta, Georgia Police Department back in the 1950s. Come on, man. There's got to be better arguments than here's what happened historically. Unless that history is like last year with the same people, there's got to be something else going on with that, doesn't there? Now, we've got some other sound here. I want to get to that in a moment. I want to tell you, though, first about selling your house. And I say that because just the other day, yesterday, in fact, I had the opportunity to walk through a new build home. And man, I love doing that. It gets your juices flowing. It gets you thinking in terms of what happens if I win the lottery, or what happens if radio really takes off and we become the next Rush Limbaugh, you know, that kind of thing. And you start thinking about homes. But I look around and I see these things, and I look up and down the street at the people who are living in these houses next. I'm like, what did you do to get in there? How did you pull it together to get in, especially in this market? And every time I have that thought, it is followed by, what would Gay Ribble tell me about this? What would Gay Ribble say about the best time to pull the trigger on selling a home in this market, especially if it's discretionary and not obligatory? Like if you had to move, that's one thing. If you want to downsize, that's another. Gay can help you figure out the best way to sell your house under both circumstances. You know this is true, not just because of the statistics that show that they sell more than other folks. They sell far more houses than most other realtors who average like 3 a year. I mean, Gay Ribble and her team have sold for thousands of Coloradans over the time she's been a realtor. That's how she knows what to do with your particular house. And she's got like 14,400, maybe it's 600 now, buyers in waiting for your listing. That's why you go to Gay Ribble. And you start online, just like everything else. Gayhasthebuyers.com, Gaye has thebuyers.com. But honestly, once again, and this is the best way to do it, I don't like customer service online. I like customer service on the phone. This is what they do too. They give you the phone number to reach them at 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD. That's Gay Ribble with the Empower Home team for your real estate needs. Now, listen, there's another clip here that we have. Billy, how many? Do we have two more clips or one? I forgot. I've lost track. We did Jordan. We did Ted. Okay, listen, let's cut away for a break then right now. We'll get to some more of the text. We have a call. We have Jay on. Jay, I promise we'll get to you as well. But we're going to play the clip from Ken. It's from an interview he did, I think, with Jake Tapper on CNN after the hearing. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Do you think that the FBI is pursuing conservatives unfairly?
No, I don't believe that. I think Director Wray is a good person. I think that he is doing his very best to make sure that the FBI follows the evidence. And I think that the FBI is largely treated unfairly in how it has been perceived and portrayed in the public.
That's Congressman Ken Buck. He is the 4th Congressional District Congressman. He's my congressman. He's been on the show a billion times, and we hope to have him on tomorrow if his schedule permits. That is obviously a tone that is very different from the one that we heard from Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz and many of the other Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee, and frankly, a lot of folks here. I will say that a couple things are just true. Nobody will mistake Ken Buck for anything other than a conservative Republican. I mean, this dude's approach to every single issue is one that just screams conservative values, and he's committed to it in a way a lot of other claimed conservatives aren't, especially when it comes to things like fiscal integrity and discipline. The other thing, though, is Ken's worked with the FBI for years. Dude was a former federal prosecutor with the U.S. Attorney's Office before he became the elected district attorney out of the fight in 19th and Weld County. This guy knows what the FBI agents, especially those on the ground floor in the trenches, if you will, bring to the table. And so he's got a perspective about how they do their job, how they've done it historically, how they've done it here. And I just think that I did not expect that, by the way, from Ken. When I was looking at the interview the other day or yesterday, and I brought it to Billy, I didn't expect to hear that. But guy just came forward and said, listen, I think this dude's a good dude, guy of integrity. I think the FBI is getting painted with a bad brush. I think they're following the evidence. Dang. Didn't expect that. Do you agree with that? Got to get to the Art of Granite, tell you about Mitch Floria before we get to Jay with the last bit of time that we have left. Mitch Floria is a wizard when it comes to the countertops, and you got to find out the only ways to do it are to get in the car and drive out to a showroom, which is how I recommend doing it so you can meet Mitch. The other way is to go online, or at least start online, and go to theartofgranite.com, all 4 words strung together, finished up with the .com there, and you can see all the beautiful stuff he has to offer. The things you can do with quartz are just redunculous, and he's a wizard with it. The other thing he'll do is he'll reward you for being a 710 listener. And he'll say, if you call in and say, I listened to the George Show, he's going to throw in the bathroom countertop for free with the kitchen countertop package, or throw in the sink for free if all you're doing is a countertop in one room. All you have to do is go to theartofgranite.com or check them out at 303-386-5919, 303-386-5919. That rings the phone directly in his pocket. That's theartofgranite.com. With what time we have left, Jay from Littleton, I'll give it to you, my man. I've got about a minute and 15 seconds. It's all yours.
Hey, buddy. So this two-tiered justice system is absolutely a fact.
Okay.
I mean, it'd be silly to think it's not. If you take a so-called conservative and they go after a conservative, that's what they're supposed to do. If you take a Democrat, they will not go after a Democrat. They won't. You can be a Democrat and get away with anything on earth. So that's the real point. That's also the real history.
What are you pointing to, though, as your evidence of that? Like, for instance, why didn't the Trump DOJ prosecute Hillary Clinton?
Because high-powered Democrats are off the table. I don't know how deep the deep state runs, but they are off the table. Biden is proof of that. If you've ever seen that, there is your proof. So
I don't know how that's proof, man.
I'd love to hear it.
Well, yeah.
Oh, it's not proof.
The high-powered,
they'll go after Trump for something Biden is clearly more guilty of by far. Hillary is more.
But what is it that he's more guilty of? What did he do?
Far.
What did Biden do?
Apparently, Trump. Biden. Well, let's see, selling the United States out to China.
Well, but man, that's something that we talk about, but there's no evidence of it. We talk about that.
You are naive, aren't you?
What's that?
You really are. You are very naive. I mean, I don't know if that's a
Jay,
good thing
forgive
or
me, man. We're out of town. Let's do this again tomorrow, Jay. I don't think I've ever been accused of being naive. Maybe dumb, maybe some other things, but naive, I wish. Hey, stick around. We'll be back tomorrow, 6 to 10. George Brauchler, 710, KNUS.